morning. Those guys having a little spring break, so we called in our resident lineman, Landrum Roberts, joining me and John Saber this morning. Landrum, how you doing,
Your
buddy?
quarterback's in trouble if I'm your resident lineman. What style of football we're playing?
Listen, we're going foot to foot, wishbone.
This is like semi-pro indoor league. If I'm your offensive lineman.
Hey, but you're a gritty guy.
Sure.
You're probably not going to run the power behind you, but
Sure.
I
was gritty back in the day. I'm not gritty anymore, to be honest with you. How are you guys? Good morning.
Good morning, man. It's fun, man. We had we got the show started. Morning jogs from 6 to 7, kind of just getting the lay of the land.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's still dialed in with Auburn and Alabama still being in the Sweet 16. UAB, going out west, and then all of a sudden now they're probably about to win the NIT. So, we're a basketball state, legitimately.
I appreciate my wife reminding me this morning as I was walking out the door, and she's gotten all dialed in and nerding out over these brackets, which I love because she interacts in the tournament and she gets fired up about games that she has no business getting fired up about. And she reminded me that in one of my brackets, which I filled out 3 for our office pool, that my South region is still perfect.
Okay.
And I reminded her that really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. If you took all of my brackets and you combine my best regions and put them all together, I would still not be in first place. But yeah, it was a fun weekend of basketball for sure.
It absolutely was. And I mean, when you look at what Auburn was able to do the first 2 games, and I think when you look at the overall number 1 seeds with Florida, Houston, Duke, and Auburn, Duke is by far looking like the best one of the group because of what they've been able to do. And I'm starting to have question marks on Auburn only because of the fact that, yes, they're still finding ways to win, but Janai Broome has been like your bell cow all season long. And now when the team needs it the most, he's not putting up the same numbers he was in the regular season. So I don't know if it's necessarily he's getting burnt out or are they defensively just starting to scheme against him? But even some of the looks that he has, a lot of it from the 3-point line, it's not falling. And now you just got to work your way down and I don't know if I'm still just puzzled on how in March, when you're supposed to turn it on, he's starting to regress a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. And if you watch Janai Broome, you notice that there's a difference. It looks like he's passive, and even going into the Alabama State game and coming out of the SEC, Janai Broome still maybe didn't look completely right. And I know that people saw the 34-point game that he had against Alabama to close out the regular season. Mm-hmm. That's Janai Broome, but his followaways, he looks like he's timid around the basket. And I don't know if it's something underlying with the shoulder that came out. Maybe it's a health thing. Maybe it's just between the ears because he's not letting on and trying to fall back like it's an injury-related excuse. But you've got to have him. I would say, though, Damian, hit the pause on that because it's now broken into weekends, and it's now another 2-game weekend for Auburn. It's a fresh arena. It's a place that you feel good about. I heard, I think it was Tahad Pettiford saying that's our home away from home or our second home, and Auburn's had a lot of success, and they'll bring a big crowd. And they're going to have a very good opponent. But that's everybody that everybody is playing at this point in the season. You're getting everyone's best. You're getting everyone in desperation mode.
Yep.
And to have other guys that stood up, and that feeling, Alabama fans know it, Auburn fans, if you followed a team that has made runs in the NCAA tournament, you just know it when you see it. And it felt like for Denver Jones, for Tahad Pettiford, for Chad Baker-Mazara, which Auburn needed desperately, maybe even more so than what you got out of Janai Broome, you had to have him performing. It seemed like they got really, really comfortable on Saturday night, and they started feeling it, and then the shots started falling. So, Janai Broome, yes, it was a disappointment the first 2 weeks. Is he playing like the National Player of the Year? No.
Right.
But he's going to have a chance to redeem himself against a Michigan team that they feature some bigs, and a guy named Danny Wolf that Auburn knows very well.
Yeah, and also Trey Donaldson.
Yeah,
he's
still not cut the hair.
No, it's only gotten bigger. And also their win over Texas A&M. I think a lot of it was Texas A&M kind of blew it there at the end because they had the game pretty much in control.
That was a weird game.
It was, and it felt so. One thing about Texas A&M with them being like the worst 3-point shooting team in the SEC. They were living and dying by the 3-point shot in the ball game. It's like, that's not your wheelhouse. It's not. And I think for Wade Taylor, you kind of look at his career overall, one of the better talents that we've seen in the SEC, but it never felt like he was able to rise above and not to say it was all on him, but you needed him to be the anchor to bring the rest of the team on, and they had an early had an early exit to, again, a good Michigan basketball team.
But it goes back to guys, whether it's been Wimp Sanderson or a guy who's played in the tournament, like our buddy Bart Heights, who played at Mississippi State in their Final Four run, in shooting travels. And if you got guard play and you got guards, veteran guards that can lead you, and they can knock down big shots at big times, that's what's going to get you to the next round. And Texas A&M, what was their deficiency? Well, it was offense and shooting. They were good at the high percentage shots. They could muck it up. They could, of course, give you, all kinds of fits on the offensive end and what they do defensively. And that was going to be a really bad matchup for Auburn had they had to face Texas A&M again.
Right.
And again, we know that he has his number. But I thought that it showed up. They didn't have enough shooters to have enough guys to make plays, knock down shots when they needed them the most.
Yeah, and taking a look at the SEC as a whole, 7 teams from the SEC have advanced to the Sweet 16. And I think everybody's kind of, not necessarily question mark, it's Arkansas finding themselves in this situation where we've seen probably one of the more inconsistent Arkansas, John Calipari-led teams we've seen in a long time. And for them to like, they had a loss to South Carolina on their record. Like, it's on the resume. We've seen bad Arkansas, and now we're starting to see good Arkansas all of a sudden when they need it the most, and they found a way to beat St. John's over the weekend.
Yeah, and does this go back to, number one, the roster that he put together, and everybody felt like Arkansas, they were underachieving based on what they had and what he had brought in. And by the way, I remember when Cal got hired at Arkansas, and you knew that he was going to have that Tyson money and that support. I said it on 3-Man Front on the show. I said, all right, book it. He's going to take that team to an Elite Eight. I never felt worse about a pick than when SEC play started. But now there's a chance that team makes it to the Elite Eight. But it's the redemption of March, and just get a team like that starts believing, and then you get some matchups, and maybe a team that you didn't match up well with. They fell in a previous round. That's what makes this tournament so much fun. But you're right, as Arkansas is a 10 seed.
Yeah.
And doing what they did to St. John's.
Is Arkansas the Cinderella this
I've never
year?
been prouder of John Calipari.
Really?
No, I did. I wasn't a total believer in St. John's, I'll be honest with you.
See, I was on the opposite end. I had St. John in one of my brackets. I had St. John's in the national championship.
Well, yeah, one of your brackets, but
yeah,
in one of my brackets, I had them advancing too.
Yeah, so I mean,
it's all right.
It is. And then we had Alabama yesterday, and for Alabama, it was a complete game because of the fact that you had multiple guys in double figures. And the two things I will say, the biggest takeaways I've gotten from both games with Robert Morris, and then last night with St. Mary's, is the bigs are like, they're starting to adapt their style. Like, they're going to run and gun, but the bigs are being extremely active for Alabama.
Yeah, that was, and I think that was St. Mary's probably game plan going in. They're thinking about Alabama as this transition team that shoots a lot of threes, but as you study the tape and you look at this Alabama team, the strength has not been their outside shooting. They found different ways to win, and they've had to do that in an SEC against teams like Auburn or other teams that they're going to feed it and they're going to make you defend the blocks and play physical. I thought Alabama yesterday, they absolutely had that mentality coming out. And whether it was Grant Nelson, whether it was Diabate, and how about Diabate stepping out and making some big shots? Alabama knew that they didn't have to throw up 33s.
Yep.
7 of 17, plenty of efficiency, but they beat St. Mary's at their own game.
They did. And I think that when you look at just the way the Sweet 16 is laid out, of course, we're going to have, because we've seen all these SEC teams, we've seen them play elite basketball all regular season long. And now, we were talking about it on Morning Jocks, it truly feels like the 16 teams that are in the Sweet 16 legitimately have a chance to win a national title. Like, you could have an argument for all 16 teams cutting down the nets at the end of the day.
You could. I go back to what you said about Duke, and it's hard to argue what Duke has done through their first 2 games. And maybe they get their true test coming up in the Sweet 16, but their first 2 games, they look like the most complete, the most dialed in, but that can fool you sometimes. Right. I give Florida a whole lot of credit yesterday.
Gritty.
Because that was a UConn team, and it's all about matchups. And with style of player, with body types, I felt like they matched up perfectly with Florida, what UConn was able to do, and with Dan Early and being able to X and O. But for Florida to put together a spurt at the end of the game when they had to have it the most and say, no, not today, yeah, it was pretty big.
Yeah, I think Walter Clayton Jr., a guy that we've seen all season long, and really and truly I've really locked in on him the last month or so in the season of just, he takes games over.
He
Like
does.
he truly feels like, okay, I understand that we have a complete team, but I am the engine that keeps this thing rolling. And the shot confidence that he has, whenever there's a big moment, it seems like he's the one that has the ball in his hands to get the momentum going for Florida. Whether he's passing up to Cogden for an alley oop, or he's hitting a big time three that's like, wait a minute, that's a stone cold killer shot with like 21 seconds left on the shot clock. And it's like, okay, he's starting to elevate his game, and it seems as though Florida was peaking at the right time, and the momentum is just continuously starting to carry over into the tournament.
Yeah, I don't know who that team is right now, and maybe it is Duke, and maybe that's the title game that we get and that America really wants. I don't know, but it does look like that maybe Duke is that team, because we've already seen the matchups with the SEC schools, and maybe Tennessee's that team too, because they've actually done it. But Auburn and Alabama, we know how they fared against Florida.
Yeah.
But neutral site. By the way, going back to the basketballs, the Wilson basketballs, and Rocco Miller, when he came on our show, he said they use a different basketball, and it's the Wilson Evo, and they used it last year during the first couple of rounds, but it's got more bounce in it, and the players talking about it, maybe something different with the seams. But how many bunnies did you see roll off? Just easy bunnies that rolled off in the first 2 weekends.
It's now that you said that, like I didn't know that information, but now kind of looking back on it, it's like, there was a lot of balls
that went halfway down and they come. And I know that happens through the regular season, but also a lot of balls that just seem like they hung out on the rim.
Yeah,
forever.
And I think that for Florida, you look at just kind of the rest of the way for them. Like Maryland just doesn't feel like a good matchup. Like it feels as though Florida kind of is playing with house money as a number 1 seed, and Maryland, to me, from what they did the first couple games, not to say that they don't have a chance, but it just doesn't feel like it's an ideal situation for them to be in right now.
It doesn't.
And Michigan could match up well with Auburn. Like I expect. So of course there's going to be one SEC team eliminated between the Kentucky-Tennessee matchup. But how many SEC teams do you think we see in the Elite Eight?
We've got plenty of time to discuss it,
because it feels.
Yeah. You see the hat I'm wearing today,
right? It feels. That's what I was thinking.
I'm feeling pretty good about the league, Damien.
Right? Like, would we be surprised if we have 6 teams in the Elite Eight from the SEC?
No. And what if we're talking about Auburn taking on Ole Miss? With a chance to go to the Final Four.
Well, if I'm Ole Miss, I don't think I want to see that one again.
No, do you want to see it again? They say how hard is it to beat a team twice, to beat a team 3 times in one season? How about 4 times?
4 times. It'll be interesting to see. We'll get Paul Finebaum answer to that as well as he returns with us as he does every Monday. Thanks to our friends at Crane Works. But let me tell you about our friends at Train. For flu, pollen, and allergy season, keep your home cleaner with Train's Clean Effects Home Air Cleaner. It removes up to 99% of airborne particles, including those contributing to allergy and virus. Is proven more effective than standard and HEPA air filters. Contact a Train certified dealer for the Clean Effects Air Cleaner. We'll have Paul Finebaum on the other side. Keep it locked right here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Welcome back into McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell, Landon Roberts in for you today as the guys celebrate a little spring break with the fam. Hopefully they are safe and having a good time and safe travels. And as we do each and every Monday, we have him, thanks to our friends at Craneworks, it's the one and only Paul Finebaum.
Lift it, load it, grade it, grind it, move it, haul it, rig it, dig it, Craneworks, Rentalworks, yeah! The big dog's got it.
Paul Finebaum on Mac and Cube in the morning is brought to you by Craneworks. Lift it, buy it, rent it, the big dog's got it. Now, Paul Finebaum.
Paul, we appreciate you hopping on with us this morning. Of course, the guys are out, so we're filling in. Got the backups. We got the backup quarterback and lineman here, Landon Roberts, with you. And Paul, just kind of taking a look at the NCAA tournament. Now with the SEC being represented in the Sweet 16, has there ever been a year like this where the SEC has clearly shown that they are the best conference in college basketball?
No, never. I mean, this is football-esque. We've had a couple of SEC championship games, three to come to mind in the last 15 or 20 years. But this is really remarkable to have 7 teams in the Sweet 16. I know a lot of people last week were going, this is something's wrong here. The SEC doesn't deserve 14. And I know Thursday and Friday the Danny Cannells of the world were jumping off their Twitter feeds by talking about the teams that were going out. But that's going to happen when you have that many. But a couple of significant things happened. I mean, obviously the chalk won, but Ole Miss and Arkansas winning was extremely significant because very few, if anybody, saw that happening. And then there were 2 other games that I think really helped the SEC the most. One was on Saturday, obviously, Arkansas beating St. John's. Listen, guys, I'm in New York a lot. St. John's has been the toast of the Cowboys. Everybody, they're like the Knicks and the Giants and the Yankees and the Mets. The entire community adopted them. And that's where all the basketball elite people live in this country. And that really put them on notice because nobody saw that coming. And then yesterday, the other darling of the East where basketball lives and dies, UConn, went down to Florida. And even though it was expected in our world, UConn was going for a three-peat. So that on top of everything else has just shattered the myth that the SEC was overrated. It's obviously not. We can all do the math on 7 into 16. And now it's just a matter of getting to the final weekend and cutting down the nest because ultimately the SEC will be decided by the champion. But so far it has had an amazing tournament.
Yeah, and Paul, with both of the teams from our state and both Auburn and Alabama making the Sweet 16, and you've been following basketball not only just in your life but here in the state, and then and doing what you do now for decades. I grew up watching it and following SEC basketball. It's truly remarkable. But to have both of those teams in the Sweet 16, the expectations are there for both programs and for Bruce Pearl and for Nate Oates. My question to you, Paul, who has the most pressure on them moving forward in this particular tournament? Which one of those coaches?
Yeah, I think it's Auburn right now. It's only happened, I think 3 times in the state's history. And I remember because back in the mid-'80s, I was a newspaper reporter, making the long plane rides all over the country, covering Auburn and Alabama in the tournament. And it was pretty unique at the time. But as far as pressure, Nate Oates getting to the Final Four last year took that one off the board. Yeah, I mean he's got a team that's capable, but I think so many people expected Auburn to get there at the end, and you can read it a little bit when you watch Auburn play that they're feeling some of that pressure, and I think getting out of the first weekend was critical for them. And I think that because of Janai Broome, because of that team has been number one so much of the year, the pressure lies there.
And Paul, since you brought up Janai Broome, what do you think is the national, I guess you would say, question mark on him from the outside? Because we've been able to see him all season long be one of the best players, if not the best player in college basketball. But so far through 2 games in the tournament, he hasn't really shown that. And then across, you see Cooper Flagg being able to put up as many points and impact plays for Duke the first 2 games of the NCAA tournament. Do you think the struggles that Janai Broome is having right now is kind of playing into effect of who could potentially be National Player of the Year in college basketball?
I don't think so. It shouldn't. And again, I don't know when that award is voted on. It probably should be voted on before the tournament. But I think Cooper Flagg has the flash. I was watching one of the networks yesterday, and they went to Maine and showed the high school he grew up with. The thing about Janai Brim that is so impressive to me is his journey to Auburn, and all of your audience knows it. I mean, this is a guy who has worked hard and earned it. Where Cooper Flagg, he's talented and he's still a teenager. I think that debate should be over. But yeah, I mean, I think he feels it, and I think sometimes when you've been number one most of the season, you carry the weight. But I think that goes out the window a little bit in the second weekend of the. You saw it in St. John's. I mean, I've watched this team all year long. I mean, they literally couldn't make a shot. But that isn't that they're bad shooters. That's the pressure of the tournament, and why in these games when you see a top-ranked team go down, they've got one shot to make a run, and when they can't do it, they are going to be out of the tournament. We saw that 2 years ago with Alabama in the Sweet 16 with the Brandon Millard team. All of a sudden, the shots didn't fall, and they felt it later. But I think right now for Auburn, the fact that they've survived, and I think in some ways they have. I mean, they've had two fairly ugly games.
Paul, with the SEC having 7 teams that make up the Sweet 16 field, with the Big Ten having 4, we know what happened in college football. Maybe it's already started, but with the national talking heads around college basketball, when is someone going to stand up and say, hey, we've got to stop the SEC? We need to reconfigure this thing.
Well, I do think there's a little bit of that going on. I mean, through 2 days, I think the Big Ten was undefeated. So I was already seeing that in my timeline. You know, Big Ten owns college basketball too. So that's why I was pretty happy to see one or two of the games. Some of the games that finally ended. Although I have to tell you, watching Michigan come from behind to beat Texas A&M was pretty sickening. I've rarely seen a team just completely wilt under the pressure as the Aggies. But ultimately, I don't think that's as big a deal. College basketball, as you guys know, because you've lived it last year, is about it's about getting to the Final Four. So, I mean, there were 68 teams a week ago. There are 16. When we talk next Monday, there'll be 4, and that's really where it starts. And if the SEC is well represented, that is where the entire sport gathers to decide what kind of year it was.
Here with Paul Finebaum, as he is each and every Monday about this time. And Paul, going back to something that you said earlier about Arkansas find themselves in a position where they're in the Sweet 16, does this kind of put John Calipari into the folklore situation of he's a lot better now when he's away from Kentucky because he kind of, I guess you say in the grand scheme of things, underachieved during his time there? But now taking this Arkansas team who we've seen lose to South Carolina of all teams, find themselves in the Sweet 16, does this elevate the legacy of what John Calipari is as a basketball coach?
I'm glad you mentioned folklore. I think that's one of Taylor Swift's best records. But anyway, the point being, I think the winner of the tournament so far is Coach Cal. I mean, I remember having a conversation in January, maybe when some mid to late January, and their season was over. I mean, they literally could not do a thing. And the fact that he got that program to the verge of the NCAA, into the NCAA, and then scored the biggest win of the tournament over St. John's, which, as I discussed earlier, it was the darling, is beyond comprehension. Thankfully for Mark Pope, Kentucky did the same thing because against a Big Ten team. Because I think if Kentucky had gone out, you would have seen a lot of the back and forth. But it is remarkable. This is John. I think this is Cal's best coaching job in at least in modern time. I think he has exercised the demons of yesteryear, and there were certainly plenty of those. It validated the decision to leave Kentucky under pressure to go to Arkansas, and it really sets him up nicely. So I know there's a lot of pro and con people out there with Calipari, but just a stunning accomplishment.
Paul, before we let you go, Texas out is their head coach. They get rid of Ronnie Terry after their loss. They name Sean Miller, Xavier coach, former Arizona coach. He's coming to Austin, be the head coach there. Regrettably, I hate that Will Wade got his deal done with NC State. To see him come back to the league would have been fascinating. There might be others who did not want to see him come back to the league. You would have more on that. But your thoughts on Texas and their hire?
It was the right decision. I think a lot of people really like Coach Terry, but that has nothing to do with it anymore. I mean, Will Wade has shattered the myth of whether you need to be well liked or not. Can you coach? And that program does not deserve to be knocked out in the play-in game. And I think they hired. I mean, Sean Miller is just a brilliant coach who did well. He's done exceptionally well wherever he's been. I think Will Wade is the most intriguing story of this tournament. I remember, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago in Destin. We all sat there as he walked in the midst of that controversy. And there were many people who didn't think he was going to survive that. And he ended up lasting another year or two. And when he left there, I think most people, the conventional wisdom was he'll never coach again at a major level. But it just shows you how the sport has changed. And instead of people saying what they did 4 or 5 years ago about leaving in disgrace, he's being celebrated now because he's transparent, and he's honest, and he's not trying to hide. Nobody ever doubted that he was a great basketball coach, and he proved that. And quite frankly, the ACC needed Will Wade, and I can't believe I'm saying this, more than Will Wade needed them.
Paul, we appreciate you, man. Filling in with the with the backups, and have a good Monday, man.
It was my pleasure, guys. Hope to see you soon.
Absolutely. That's Paul Finebaum of the Paul Finebaum Show, which you can hear on Jocks 94.5, presented each and every Monday. Our friends at Craneworks, they're on the Higginbotham hotline. You deserve solutions that are built for you. Higginbotham is your one-source solution for insurance, financial, and HR services. When we come back here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, we'll continue the discussion of the Sweet 16, just the NCAA tournament as a whole, and get your thoughts as well. The phone lines, text line, always open, 205-834-9450. Keep it locked right here as we return on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. 7:33 here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning.
As you get behind the glass, all of a sudden you forget everything. You forget the clock. You forget.
Man, I just went and grabbed some coffee.
Yeah, I'm just starting looking around. I asked John. I was like, "Is he coming
30
back?
seconds left in the break.
Is he coming back?" I mean, I know what to do, but I'm a guest this morning. I felt like I was just sitting in somebody's living room on their couch, and they just left the room.
No, man, you're a professional. You've been here before.
Like, where did he go? I thought he just ran to the kitchen, but he's been gone for 30 minutes. Where did he go?
I just ran and got some coffee. I'll tell you what it is. Complete sidebar. This weekend, I participated in a slow pitch softball tournament back in Maplesville.
You're officially old now.
Yes. I'm still sore.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing, I pride myself on being the most athletic person here in this building. I do hang on to that.
We'll give you that one.
I've started to realize the older I get, the harder it is to get back to that mode. So I opened up a little bit. I had an infield single. I ran a couple out, and then I started to realize, like, oh, I am not 23 anymore. Like I truly am tired after the first giddy up. Like it was challenging. We ended up losing the championship game, which stinks. But overall, and it was an hour time limit, so we played for an hour. Whatever score was, we went with that. I am not as fast as I used to be, and I don't think I realized that until there were a couple pop-ups that came out there to me. Back in my heyday, we out of there. Go get it. Nothing.
You found yourself laboring late.
About
your eyes are the same size.
Exactly.
Your legs are the same size, but the motions. Just ain't. Okay.
The fifth inning, there was one that went over my head. Back in my heyday, get the angle. I got it. Mm-mm.
When I got to college, and some of my buddies that I grew up with, and they had all moved back here to the Birmingham area, and they started playing in one of those softball leagues. And I heard about it for a season. They said, "Landry, you got to come out. You got to come out." And this was mid-20s, and it was a beer league. I mean, they would go and have the coolers, and you'd have a lot of fun. So I went and decided it was the first game, and I'm legging out a hit to first. I pull a quad, and then to overcompensate, I'm going to keep running down the line. I'm going to play it at home with. That's how we were trained. But pull the other quad, make it to first. And there's my buddies are just kind of laughing, thinking, oh, he's just a slight pull. And I'm like, and I'm waving, somebody come out. I'm going to need somebody to pinch run for me. And they thought I was kidding. And it was, no, I'm serious. I can't. So yeah, that was my slow pitch softball. I played catcher for the rest of the
understandable
for the rest of the season. But that was my last season. Quads, man, those are tough to deal with.
Yeah, well, thank goodness I didn't pull a quad, but I do feel I do feel sore. And I again, people say, 28, oh, you're still young. You got your youthful wits about you. That's overblown. It is. I'm a decade removed from high school, man. I've reached the point.
Maybe in some other countries, 28, you're still in your prime. Not here.
Not here.
With all that you've been exposed to in your 28 years.
No, and I again, it's one of the more humbling experiences because, again, the speed is still there. I got ear to pocket. The form is still good. I was like, okay. I wouldn't time me, to see what I run a 40 in, but I think I could probably,
you
out a 4
have been alive across 4 decades now. So let that sink in.
When you put it like that.
Yeah.
But it does make you feel bad. It's got to make you feel a little bit bad, Damien, because you got guys competing in this tournament that are about your age.
There were guys older.
Yeah, that's true. The way we did college now, yeah.
I mean, Baker Mazzara, Ashworth, all of you guys could have played around the same time.
Yeah, McCormick from Miami back in football season. He was 29 out there playing with them young bucks. It was I don't know what level of stretching you've gotten to this point, or if you never got out of shape, but the point of getting back into quote unquote shape is hard. It's mental. It's more mental than anything.
I understand that. But you were doing it for a good cause. So
exactly.
Good for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Hers Barbecue for putting it on. And, we raised some money, and it was a good time. And I mean, with the tornado damage that we had down in Maplesville, we helped some people out. And I will say this, shout out to my cousin Glenn, who was behind the plate as an umpire. Never seen the strike zone.
Cousin Glenn?
Yeah, never seen the strike zone that big. I mean, the ball was it didn't hit it was hitting the backstop, and it was a strike on me. And I was like, wait a minute now. I know I may be one of the younger people here, but let's have some respect.
There are unwritten rules in slow pitch softball too that I learned. Comebacker to the pitcher right up where it came from, that's a no-no. That'll get two teams fighting. I didn't know that.
Not me either. Because I sure enough laid one like right back to where it came from. And
It's a big deal.
it is. I mean, he threw me out, but that's when that was one of the moments I was like, oh, I'm not as fast as I used to be. But I will say this, for a lot of the older people that participate in like softball leagues and things like that, to see how they hustle around the bases and stuff, it's very inspiring. It was like, oh, why am I over here making excuses at 28?
Very inspiring.
He got 56-year-old out here. He got to go to work in the morning, and he's out here playing some ball. He got to go drive some truck, and he out here hustling, diving after loose ball. I was like, okay, I really need to tighten up, but I am.
You got to get in your slow pitch game shape. It's a different kind of game shape.
That's what it is. Like I pride myself on hustling on and off the field. I got a little lazy. I will admit, hustling from the dugout out to the left field. It was, let me
catcher, man. It's great.
Yeah, let me trot on out here.
Slap tags, all you got to worry about.
But you take the elevator up here, don't you? You don't take the stairs, do you?
But I take the stairs down.
Oh well, yeah.
I take the stairs down.
Okay, you let gravity help.
Down.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
That's my little claim to fame. I was like, I'll at least take the stairs down.
I will know. Greg takes them on the way up.
Oh,
so
get his steps in. Is that why?
That's
well,
what
must be.
Or is it the elevator at times?
I mean, it's probably maybe a fear of the elevator.
It gets a little
yeah.
It get a little dicey in there every
You're
now
right.
and then. When I walked in that morning, there was a bottle of water and a pillow. I was like, this is not good.
No.
What happened?
It's a fair warning.
Right?
It's a fair warning. But no, that was my I guess my get off my lawn moment of just, hey, I've reached y'all's status now. I'm older.
Are we going to dial into some basketball?
We should. I think we should.
Probably.
My apologies.
No, that was good. That was a good story.
Thank you.
I was just trying to help you tease the next segment.
Absolutely. And we'll get back to it. We'll talk about some Sweet 16 recap. Well, how's your brackets looking? 205-834-9450. Landrum's filled out 74. I've only filled out 3. And we're not looking too good. Thank you, St. John's. But we want to hear from you. 205-834-9450. Keep it locked right here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Oh, man. The memories that come back with this song.
It's been 2 years, and yet every time you hear it,
it's like, man,
it's not 1:45.
I think about
Friday.
the movie Boys in the Hood when Trey goes to live with his dad, and he makes him rake all the leaves.
I wasn't expecting that from you.
Wow, that's okay.
That's.
You're welcome.
Yeah. It's very Cube-like. It's very Cube-like. See what happens when you get in that seat, man. You start to turn into an offensive lineman.
No.
Talk about boys.
Negative. We will not be talking slide protections today.
Welcome back into McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell, Landry Roberts, John Sayberry here with you, having some fun as we kind of look at the Sweet 16. And when we kind of look at some of these matchups, primarily with Auburn and Alabama, I think with Auburn and Michigan, okay, we have through the first two games, you've seen it by committee. So do you lean more into this matchup? Okay, if Johni Broome does kind of find that spark again, it's hard for me to feel confident in Michigan trying to, like I'd say, quote unquote, pulling off the upset in this situation because of the fact that, okay, the supporting cast, they're elevating their roles. And if Auburn gets that, the usual Johni, then Auburn should have the utmost confidence that they're going to find themselves in the Elite Eight / Final Four.
I think it was really good for Auburn, number one, to play a guy that at times Creighton, what they want to do is run things through Kalkbrenner. And I felt like that was now Michigan's going to be different because they have a two-headed monster. You got a guy that came with Dusty May from FAU, a 7-footer. Of course, you got Danny Wolf, who's the transfer from Yale, and Auburn fans and Bruce Pearl, they know about him. But I don't think that he has to. Johni Broome doesn't have to be everything as far as your scorer. And it's something that Bruce Pearl said, I think, during the tournament. He said we need to maybe reassess how much of our offense we're running through Johni, because if those things get taken away, you're going to have to shoot the mid-range jumper. That's something that Todd Pettiford was able to do in Auburn with their first shot offense the other night. I think that was a good warm-up. I don't think everything, but think about the things that Johni Broome was able to do away from the ball.
Yeah.
Away from the ball, or even to allow to clear out space, whether it was, I thought it was masterful what they drew up and some of those screens that you had and those seals that they had with Kalkbrenner down in the paint and to free up some other guys. That's why you had to have other guys that stepped up and played with confidence, and Bruce Pearl telling those guys, you got to trust each other, share the ball, and that started happening. So Broome has got to be really, really good, but I don't know that Johni Broome, you need to have 25 from him.
Right.
He just needs to be solid on the board, and you need him, I think, more so on the defensive end than you probably do on the offensive end.
Yeah, and I think the depth for Auburn is going to be key as well because, again, we've seen Todd Pettiford. I don't think the nation has really understood his impact when he's on the floor.
He's so smooth.
Oh, my gosh. And he's a freshman. Like, this is a guy that was playing high school basketball at this time last year. And for him to step in and have such a pivotal role in what Auburn's success is, and I think that the confidence that he's feeling and gaining through the first couple games, he's going to be I think he's kind of the X factor of what would separate Michigan, keeping it close, or Auburn really running away with it.
Yeah, go back and it goes back to guard play, and you have to have guys that can step up and make shots in big moments. And Todd Pettiford has shown this throughout the season. Go back to the game that they played at the Toyota Center in the non-conference against that Houston team.
Yep.
When he stepped up, when Auburn had a lull, they're trailing there in the first half, and what does Todd Pettiford do? He takes over, and he starts raining trays and making just unbelievable shots. He's a heck of a talent. Had to have him. And then what happened? Denver Jones. He finds his stroke. Chad Baker-Mazara. And I'll give a lot of credit to Chad Baker-Mazara. And as much criticism, and a lot of it was deserved, but what you saw him do is dial it in, focus on his game, still play with intensity. He missed, he knocks down the shot early, then he starts missing shots, and then Broome starts missing point-blank shots. And you're thinking, oh gosh, is he going to get in his own head? Chad Baker-Mazara did not. He persevered. He came back, 17 points, what he was able to do, put his body on the line.
Yep.
That was huge for Auburn. So Todd Pettiford, though, back to your point, you've got to have a guy like that to make a run. And if he can stay hot, he can have that kind of production out of him and knock down big shots against Michigan, then Auburn's going to be in the Elite Eight.
Absolutely. And then we flip it over to the Alabama side of things, their matchup with BYU. It's pretty much going to be Alabama looking in the mirror. who's going to make their shots from three, because they both play with a lot of pace and they both get after you. But I think for Alabama, what you've seen the first two games with Robert Morris and with St. Mary's is the bigs are getting active and they're making their presence felt. And you talked about Mo Diabate, him stepping up. Grant Nelson coming back from injury and making impactful plays in both games. I think that for Alabama, for as inconsistent as you saw your team, especially on the back stretch of the season, when you're starting to question, man, is Grant Nelson ever going to turn it around? It seems like he saved his best for the last moments of the season. And I think for what Alabama's been able to do, you haven't needed Mark Sears to go out there and, play Superman ball. It's kind of been a flowing offense. And when they have kind of lulls and they're missing shots, everybody still has the confidence like, hey, all we need to do is see one go in. And I think another thing that they've been able to do is, along with their bigs, is a lot of defensive pressure. And you saw it a lot last night with St. Mary's, where, St. Mary's really couldn't buy a shot anyway. And even when they had one that was open, they weren't falling. And I think that defensively, Alabama's starting to get into the groove of things. And that's what makes them so difficult, because you can see this team making a championship run because of the ability and what they're able to do, making their threes and getting to the cuff. But I think now that they're not just living and dying by the three, they're accepting like, hey, we'll get it to a big one-on-one. You get to the cup, we'll hit you with some alley-oops and some pick and rolls. Like, they're starting to win games in multiple ways instead of just living and dying by the three and getting to the cup.
Yeah, for Alabama and this next opponent, I know we'll have plenty of time to talk about BYU, but to your point, what they were able to do against St. Mary's, and St. Mary's going 3 or 4 from outside, and those 3 shots, they hit them in the second half. Those 3 shots came late. I give Alabama a lot of credit. It was not a good night shooting for St. Mary's, but even with some of the looks and creating some of the offense that St. Mary's wanted to create, I thought Alabama did a good job down low with the likes of Grant Nelson and some of their other bigs of just going up and making things problematic. And how many contested shots did you have there at the rim? And I go back to the SEC and the SEC play and how many different teams that tested them, and having a quick whistle in a lot of those games. We were talking about it in the break, and I don't know if our listeners, they've picked up on this, but officials letting them play a little bit more in this tournament. And for the guys that were expecting contact and they're going up and they're looking for that whistle, you might have gotten it in conference play, but you're not exactly going to get it. Doesn't mean you're going to get it in this. I think that that's been good. I think that has maybe, at least in the first 2 rounds, some of these players, they've kind of adjusted to it. Yeah. And they're not going in with that expecting to get fouled mentality where they're going strong at the hoop. It hasn't resulted in some of the bunnies being missed, but again, I blame our friends at Wilson and that really bouncy basketball. You had no idea about the basketball thing,
no,
right?
I really didn't.
And apparently this was the talk of the first 2 rounds from players last year. And
Really?
I'd forgotten about it, but yeah, it's a basketball. It's got more bounce in it, but I'm sure Nate Oates and Bruce Pearl, they probably have those basketballs at their practice facilities.
Oh, 1,000%.
They're shooting with those this week.
They took that into an account.
No, but Alabama, you're going to have to be able to knock down some shots against this BYU team. Isn't it interesting the way that the bracket, because the talk was Auburn, they got screwed. They got a terrible draw.
Right.
And maybe Michigan ends up being the team that knocks them out of the tournament. But now when you look at, you saw Michigan State play against New Mexico, and in their first 2 games, okay. But that's not a team that I look at and say, well, that's not a team that Auburn can beat or matches up with. Michigan maybe more so. But potentially you're going to play the winner of Michigan State, of Sparty, and Ole Miss if you beat Michigan. But then look at Alabama's road. You got to play BYU.
Yeah.
Who I think you make the argument right now and at the closing weeks of the season, BYU, top 4 hottest team in the country as far as the way they're playing and how many different ways that they can beat you. Look at Tennessee. They got to play Kentucky for a second time in the Sweet 16, or third time. Kentucky beat them twice during the regular season.
Oh, boy.
In Knoxville and also in Lexington. So you've got that. If you're Duke, potentially you've got to run into a BYU or an Alabama. And then Florida, meanwhile, are you taking on John Calipari and Arkansas again, a team from your own conference that knows you pretty well? So when you look at it, would you say Auburn right now, as far as path, would it be third easiest?
I'll probably say the easiest.
And if you want to go by Vegas lines, right now, currently Auburn is an 8-point favorite. They open up as a 9.5-point favorite over Michigan. The line dropped to 7.5, and now it's back to up to 8. Alabama, meanwhile, a 4.5-point favorite over BYU.
The thing about Auburn is, if the path looks good, but I would have more confidence had they not looked as sloppy, or not gonna say sloppy, but not as polished as the other number one seeds. Like, I mean, Florida matched up with a great UConn team. No matter how you slice it up, UConn two-time defending national champions, and they took them to the wire. And Walter Clayton Jr. hitting big shots. I think that if I had more, and I know I'm kind of just piling on Janai Broome, but like he's the guy, and he has been your guy all season long. And it's just when you need him the most, he hasn't shown up just yet.
But you still won by 12 against a team that
Right.
shot 65% from three,
Mm-hmm.
that seemingly did everything right. But Auburn, the way that they got it after it on defense,
Mm-hmm.
if you're watching and you knew that nobody took a play off.
Right.
They went hard for 40 minutes the other night. Their coach told them, we need to see the effort, the intensity. And if you go back, that relentless defense, that's how Auburn got into this position. Maybe some of those things were forgotten about. It's easy when you wrap up a regular season title, but they were dialed in the other night. That kind of defense will overcome a lot.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
And speaking of defense,
deficiencies on the offensive
I think
end.
some of the switching that you saw, even Janai Broome being out there on 3-point shooters.
Yeah, pushing out. Yeah.
Yeah, like his impact was still there. I'm looking at it just on what we're expecting from him offensively.
Taking away the perimeter is very similar to what you saw Auburn be able to do to Alabama at Coleman Coliseum and moving their guys off the 3-point line. If you take one, you're going to have to take it from the logo.
Yeah.
They did that in the second half anyways.
Right. So, I mean, when you look at it just all together, like it's going to be a fun ride for the Sweet 16. I think it's just going to be, it's all about matchups and what you do that game. And that's, again, you just have to be better than that team.
And
that
BYU,
day.
they're chippy. I don't know if you saw Elbow.
Well, Chris Youngbill better watch out then. He's been on receiving end on one. And a poke to the eye.
He'll give it back a little bit too.
Yeah.
That might be interesting to watch. Youngblood versus number 25 for BYU.
I'm telling you, man. We'll keep it going. Another hour Mac and Cube next. Hour number 2 here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell alongside Landrum Roberts. And, of course, John Saber behind the glass holding it down for the guys as they enjoy a little spring break. Enjoy a little spring break. Must be nice.
Yep. My spring break memory still goes back and it tied into March Madness. I was in middle school, and we went down to Panama City Beach. And it was one of those spring breaks where, it's hit and miss what kind of weather you get. True. But it was one of those cold, windy spring breaks. It felt like mid-February.
Yeah.
But the Leitner Grant Hill, Duke versus Kentucky.
You were in middle school when that happened?
Mm-hmm. Isn't that crazy?
You're a little.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's something I'll never forget. It's one of those epic moments of March Madness.
Man, the spring break for me, I go back to college. We had the spring break the week after Dak Prescott had a little altercation.
Okay.
Yeah. So love Eddie G. He told us to, be careful because they're targeting football players. We were like, Coach, we're Division III. Unless we run into, somebody from Rhodes or Sewanee that wants to smoke, I think we're just gonna have a good time. We're gonna be smart. But he was worried. He's like, hey, you gotta be safe out there. They're gonna target you. You're a valuable commodity.
So you guys walking on the strip, y'all were not a target. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. I'll tell you what, though.
Y'all did not pass the eye test.
No. We looked okay, but nobody was confusing us with Derrick Henry or thing.
Yeah.
But I did see Derrick Henry on the sidewalk of Club.
Nobody was looking at you going, oh, that's Ryan Williams.
Exactly. They're like, is that Damian Mitchell from Birmingham Southern? Nobody was saying that. I kind of put it on in. But I did see Reuben Foster, Reggie Ragland, and Derrick Henry there in Club Vila. And that's when I realized, there's a big gap.
That's when you realized you didn't want to tackle Derrick Henry?
Even just
it took you to seeing him in Club La Vila on the dance floor to realize I don't want any part of Derrick Henry.
And I'm like, there's no way he's just a year older than me. I'm 19, he's 20. I'm like, there's no way we have the same, we're in the same bracket. There's just no way. Same with Reggie Ragland. I'm like,
kids these days, though, aren't they running out of places to go? All these cities and municipalities saying, no, don't come here. We don't want your money. We don't want your problems.
Right. Back in my day, it used to be live.
Well, for certain festivals and certain events like that, the property owners down there, the people who work at those places, they don't mind it one bit keeping the teenagers and the college crowd away. Servers down, everybody you talk to down there,
they know,
talks about it in a negative light. They don't pay for their meals, or if they do, they don't tip. They steal salt shakers, hot pepper sauce. That's the restaurant side of things. And then the horrible things you hear from management of these condos and these maintenance people that they find. Because young people are nasty. Let's be honest.
They are. I'm so glad I've reached this level.
Especially in those settings, they're nasty.
Yeah. Act like you got some home training.
A little bit.
Just a little.
Why are you going to leave that?
You wouldn't do this at your own house.
No.
Yeah. Act like you got some sense. 205-834-9450. Phone lines, text lines always open. Landry, we got any text messages coming in about just March Madness or anything we talked about in the first hour?
We do. We have a text coming in. Don't know who this listener is. We appreciate them listening. And it's actually Scott. He signed it there at the end. He says, was I the only one who saw the obvious travel on Queen's last-second shot? Talking about the Maryland last-second shot that they had over Colorado State last night. 3 steps still equals travel. Please explain if I'm wrong. Can't explain if you're wrong. Nope.
It was.
Oh, that's easy. You were the only one because was it called?
It didn't happen.
Last I checked, Penalty Vulture crosses all sports, not just football.
It's so funny, though, that he says that because the highlight goes across our screen here in the studio. And I just go back to what an unbelievable shot. And for him to say, quote, give me the expletive ball.
Yeah.
And then to go and name his shot and to have a fall away baseline off the glass, perfectly kissed. That was pretty special. That was a great way to end a weekend.
Exactly. Because when you look at just March Madness so far, and I know a lot of people were kind of frustrated because we love the
travel.
Yeah, it was a travel. We love the tournament because we have so many, upsets. We have the darling Cinderellas. Well, this year we necessarily don't have a Cinderella team unless you're rocking with Coach
Chalk's
Cal.
holding.
Unless you're rocking with Coach Cal and as a 10 seed because they're the only double-digit seed there. But
I'm not claiming to be prophetic, but I thought that Chalk would hold this year, maybe more so than past years, because now we have had those full cycles of the transfer portal and NIL, and it's completely taken over.
Yeah.
And that was the fear with some of these cool stories where you saw the guy that was playing for a program, and it still happens for 4 or 5 years, and maybe he's all MEAC or all whatever. And those tournament teams, like your St. Peter's, they make those runs. There's unfortunately a lot of those players that are not on those rosters anymore. They're either starting and someone's starting 5 for a Power 4 school, or they're on their bench and playing in one of those roles. A prime example would have been, and this team's not in the tournament, they got eliminated in the championship of the SoCon, but think about a guy like JP Pegues, who came from Furman, who was an all-conference type of player. He's played an NCAA tournament, had a big shot to win an NCAA tournament game. He's on Auburn's bench. Think about what a guy like that could have meant to a Furman program who got beat by Wofford there in the championship game. So maybe some of that really starting to come to rest in college basketball, where more of these teams, it's just clearly defined where the elite and then there's that drop off. I'm just really stoked that for one of mine, we did it for 3-man front, our Final Four, our official Final Fours. Why not go all SEC?
And realistically, that's kind of what it's looking like.
Well, I mean, right now, would you not be disappointed if we have less than 2 teams in the Final Four?
Oh yeah, yes, 1,000%.
2 is the minimum.
The bare minimum. Because when you look at, and honestly, when you look at all the SEC teams that are still playing, I didn't have Ole Miss making it this far. I had them going out in the second round. I didn't think they were going to be here this weekend. But now looking at the matchup with Michigan State, to your point, it doesn't look like Michigan State is just unbeatable. Who says Ole Miss can't pull it off? And the same with Arkansas. Being in this position, you've already kind of, quote unquote, slayed a giant in St. John's. What's Texas Tech at this point? So, like, when you look at, and then, of course, with Tennessee and Kentucky, one of the teams is going to be eliminated. But you brought it up. Kentucky, they own the series right now. They're up 2-0. It's hard to beat a team twice anyway. 3 times. I mean, if you're Rick Barnes, brother, your hands are tied at this point. Like, you have to win against Kentucky. And if you're Mark Pope, you're like, this is what Cal left me with, and we did what we needed to do in the portal. Let's go make it happen. Alabama makes their shots. They could be in there. Like, it doesn't seem very far-fetched that we could potentially see an all-SEC Final Four.
Well, and it's crazy. We're talking about an Ole Miss team that Chris Beard, while they were better and punching their ticket, I thought that it was pretty unfortunate. They got an 11 seed, North Carolina, who decided to play their best basketball against San Diego State in the first 4 in Dayton, and playing like they did. And you thought, well, could that momentum carry over into that game with Ole Miss? But Ole Miss handled in their business. Then last night against an Iowa State team that, beginning of the season, they were top 3. They were considered one of those elite teams. Some injuries, some other things that maybe the 3 wasn't representative of Iowa State and who they truly were, but not taking anything away from Ole Miss. But Ole Miss would be the surprise for me out of the SEC that's in the Sweet 16. But what's crazy is we're talking about a Kentucky team would be the second biggest surprise.
Right. And think about, I mean, just look at the
Arkansas. I guess you throw Arkansas in there.
Yeah. Because I didn't think they would be. Like, you got to think about it. At one point during the season, and what Paul Finebaum was talking about earlier, it was earlier in the season, we're thinking Arkansas, oh man, Cal's going to have his work cut out for him. It ain't going to happen. They're skating by SEC play. And then all of a sudden they're in the Sweet 16 and legit have a chance of going to the Elite 8.
But how many times have we seen that? And I know they didn't start in the first 4, but we go back to a few years ago with UCLA and that team that made that run and how they finished their season. We've had other examples of it in the NCAA tournament. Arkansas is just that team. You knew that they were built for it and what they had done through NIL. And then you get Flan back from an injury.
Yep.
And you got a guy like Cal who's got plenty of tournament experience, where he admittedly said doesn't care anything about the conference tournament. The one that he's worried about, and obviously he was dialed in on, was the big dance. But for them to be in that spot, that's scary if I'm playing Arkansas right now, because that's a team that's playing with a lot of confidence and nothing to lose, and a coach who's been there, and they'll be ready to play, and another week to prepare. Well, a week, say that. Alabama having to play late last night and then only having a few days, and then you got to suit up again and play that BYU team.
Yeah, you're the first game up.
That's a quick turnaround.
It is. But I think when you look at, I mean, specifically with Alabama and Auburn both, we expected them to be at this position just because of how they're constructed. And now just watching them after 2 games, I think that the confidence that you have in Auburn, it's okay. If Janai is not if he's not, playing at the level that we expect him to, everybody else is starting to step their game up. Like you look at the Denver Joneses, you look at Tahad Pettiford, Chad Baker-Mazara, even with injury coming in and giving you 17. And then for Alabama, you had multiple guys in double figures. And it's like, okay, like everybody's playing team basketball. Where now it doesn't feel like, oh, I have to, like Mark Sears doesn't have to put the Superman cape on. Janai Broome doesn't have to put the cape on of, okay, the engine goes if I go. It's everybody else starting to piece it together. And I think that's what helps these teams in the long run. And even with the likes of Duke, you got Proctor hitting 6 or 7 threes last night. We know what Cooper Flagg has done. But when you look at just the totality of the SEC, each team has a different makeup. And I feel like they're all starting to hit their flow at the right time. And with Tennessee, you got Chaz Lanier, who, Rick Barnes had to tell him during the season, like, hey, we are giving you too much money for you not to be putting up your shots. Like, we need you to score. And I feel like ever since that conversation, he's been doing nothing but score. And I think with Zakai Ziegler, somebody we know has been the anchor on the defensive side for Tennessee, and everybody's starting to step their game up. I think when you look at each team, every one of their strengths is starting to be in the forefront. So it's not really a surprise that they're in the position that they're in the Sweet 16.
Good point. We get more of your text, 205-834-9450. Someone throwing this one out earlier saying, I don't understand y'all because Florida struggled with a mediocre UConn. Creighton would beat UConn. And Creighton did beat UConn during the regular season.
Yeah.
Beat him in one game, lost to him by 4 in another. Also beat St. John's, beat a Marquette team that was in the tournament briefly, as they typically are. But no, that Creighton team, that was a good Creighton team.
Yeah.
That Auburn beat.
I wouldn't necessarily say that was a mediocre UConn team.
No. UConn they had some of the same dudes, and they had that championship experience. I thought that was a tough test for Florida. I don't take anything away from Florida and what they did yesterday. Answering the bell, and when you're dead and buried with about, the way that game was going, it was still in doubt.
Yeah.
But for them to actually make it closer than the score indicated and close that gap with Florida up, 8-9 with just over a minute to go, that was pretty impressive. This one coming in from one of our listeners, and it says, good morning, guys. Ashworth of Creighton looked like a 42-year-old used car salesman from Little Rock with 3 kids and a loving wife. That's it. Thanks.
Okay.
I said a manager of a well-to-do tire store. That's what I thought. But his son Tommy, there were a lot of the cutaways that they had to Tommy and Ashworth's wife there. Just some of the cool storylines you get from March Madness.
Yeah, and I think for Creighton too, like, I give them a lot of credit for how much fight they really have. Like Coach McDermott has been like, I don't think he can go anywhere. Like he's just going to be a Creighton guy. It's going to be difficult to get him out of there. But I think what their style, the way that they needed a more consistent big man. Like Ashworth, he had his moments, but I think all game long, like Janai Broome was really kind of like
Dylan Cardwell too.
Yeah, they were beating him up. Like it was, okay, we're not going to let you get anything down here on the block. So y'all are going to have to live and die from the 3-point shot.
Well, and it's something that Pearl said in the post game, and he said, I think that our style started to wear on them late in that game because Creighton, that was a really competitive game. Well, for the most part, it was competitive for 40 minutes. But when Auburn took that game over, it was around the 10-minute mark.
Yeah,
where
you could feel
they started
momentum.
Flexing their muscles, and it was a 4-point lead, and then all of a sudden they stretched it to 6, and then 8, and then they're hovering around 8, and then they get it to double digits, and had some big shots there. But no, Creighton, Ashworth, that was a veteran group. Auburn's got a veteran group and some guys, but you have to have some of those other guys like Tahad Pettiford who stepped up in a big time way. Drake asks, is Walter Clayton the best shooter in college basketball? He's, if not the best, he's one of the best. But as far as clutch, game on the line,
oh man,
that is the last pick for me if I'm playing Florida that I want shooting the ball.
Like he is
when they need a big shot, he's that guy
with ease, and the confidence that he shoots it with too. Like I'm not gonna say he's Steph Curry like, but like that who's getting the ball for Florida in crunch time situations. Like it's going to go through number one.
But I felt like that style in Florida They like to play that physical up and down transition. Let's go. Felt like maybe that started to wear on UConn a little bit towards that game.
Yeah. But I got to give a lot of credit to Dan Hurley, too. Like, he's, for as much as he does complain about some stuff, the man can coach.
He does complain.
Yeah, he can coach.
Yeah. There was never a question.
Man.
No, it's not Dan Hurley, the coach. It's all the extras and the whining. And
Right.
complaining.
It's like, man.
Where you're seating is the start time of a game.
Right. Like, those are external factors, man. Lock in. Just lock in.
No, but you're stoked if he's your coach.
1,000%.
Because he had that team winning that basketball game and turning the basketball world on its head for much of that game yesterday. Another one coming in, Ashworth. He looks like he's about 30. Well, he did a Mormon mission, which I didn't know prior to the tournament.
I didn't either.
So, yeah, he's an older guy. He's seasoned.
Yeah. But you get a lot of that, though.
Yeah, you do. With some of these coaches. Now, do we question anybody's age? Well, I just assume that everybody's 23, 24.
At this point. Even 25.
This question, what do y'all think about the Xavier coach to Texas, Sean Miller? If you missed it, Chris Del Conte, the AD. There was a report that Nate Oates, his name came up, some other names, and then quickly moved on. And they did not get any warm and fuzzies coming back, apparently, from whoever that they spoke with in those channels. They might have just looked at Nate Oates' buyout and said, even though we're Texas, we're not ready to do that. Sean Miller, who was at Arizona, and then all the stuff happened with the NCAA and the federal wiretaps and Will Wade, he was caught up in some of that. Sean Miller, he loses his job. He ends up having to go back to Xavier, where he coached in the early part of his career. But that's a really good get. He's a heck of a basketball coach, and he's going to have all the tools in the shed at his disposal.
Imagine, if you're Rodney Terry, you walking across and you're congratulating Coach Miller on a great game, and then, a little over 48 hours, your job is pretty much gone, and the person that just beat you is your replacement. It's like, oh, well, appreciate y'all.
And Cody says Dan Hurley had all the right to be PO'd if they had lost to Oklahoma because of calls that was going against them in that Oklahoma game. I give it to Oklahoma. They gave them all they wanted.
Yeah.
Will Don be at Auburn East on Friday?
More than likely. He said he didn't win too much in Biloxi, so he's probably a little strapped for cash.
And Damian Christian saying, forget Dan Hurley. Anytime that fool loses, it's a good day.
Oh.
Biggest blank in college sports.
College sports?
No, that might be a summer vote where we have that.
Yeah.
College, there's some others that I put up there too.
Yeah.
I think maybe you have bigger expletives without the championship hardware.
Brian Kelly would be more. I'd put him above.
If you want to start that today, we can.
My fault. Yeah,
I was going to table it for a.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be something good to do in June.
Yeah.
800-239-WJOX. Also 205-834-9450 on the Jocks text line. You can get in, interact your reactions to the weekend. Both Auburn and Alabama advancing. UAB, they advance. If you missed that one, out in Santa Clara, down by 17, come back in the second half. They win that game 88-84. So they're going to play UC Irvine coming up on Wednesday.
So do you think they're coming back and then flying back out west, or you just got to go
I don't know
me?
I don't know I don't know how much they took with them. I'm guessing they you have I don't know. I need to check in with David Crane.
Yeah, like, how big was the suitcase?
I don't think he took his sticks. He's probably great. You can rent sticks though.
We'll keep it going on the other side. Keep it locked on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Landry Robertson, Damian Mitchell, we are with you. 8:22 here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell, Landrum Roberts, John Saber here with you. Speaking of the Auburn Tigers and their trip to the Sweet 16, there's a reason why Auburn Athletics hand-selected Andrew Sports Medicine. Andrew Sports Medicine's Dr. Benton Emblem and Dr. Charles Pitts to serve as their team physicians. They provide the highest quality of sports medicine care in an effort to keep the Tiger student-athletes safe, healthy, and competing at the highest level. Andrew Sports Medicine is the choice for Auburn Athletics. There's no doubt they should be your family's number one choice for sports medicine and orthopedic care. Andrew Sports Medicine has 7 locations across Central Alabama, from Birmingham, Coleman, Gardendale, Hoover, Pelham, and Trussville. They offer same-day, next-day appointments for acute sports injuries. Visit andrewsportsmedicine.com today to begin your journey of achieving victory over injury.
How you feeling about your Final Four? Because in one of mine, I went all SEC Final Four, and I'm actually feeling pretty good about it because I knew not many people would pick an all SEC Final Four. But to have your Sweet 16 table set, and to have my 4 teams, and that being Auburn, Alabama, Florida, and Tennessee, and given their matchups, it's a lot more realistic than when I finally submitted my third and final bracket on Thursday morning.
Understandable. Right now, in one of my brackets that I'm having the most success in, I had Florida. No, I had St. John's, Houston, Arizona, and Auburn. St. John's, of course, is eliminated. Arizona has to play Duke after Duke has looked extremely hot. So the confidence meter, if on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably at like a 4.
If we get Tennessee and Houston in the Elite Eight, that'll be a fun game to watch.
Man.
Just with the defense and the styles of those two and how they get after it. Duke, Alabama, that'd be fascinating as well. But to me, just watching these teams towards the end of the season, how they're built, and now through 2 games of the tournament, I would hate it for the SEC. I would hate it for the local ties. Hear me out. But Duke and Florida, those 2 teams squaring off in the final game.
It'd be exciting.
It's not like you would watch it and go, well, I don't feel like we're getting the 2 best teams right now in college basketball. You can make the argument for others. I'm just saying right now, the way they're playing, it feels like those 2 are those teams. And that's why the majority of America has them in their Final Four and playing in the championship game, and one of those teams winning it.
Yeah. I mean, they're both like heavyweights right now. And I think for Duke, they've been the example of, the ACC stinks. Like it stunk this year. But Duke kind of course, a couple losses here and there. But overall, they show that they're just not the best team in the ACC. They're one of the best teams in the nation. And it kind of diluted the fact, of course, with the ACC being as bad, but now through 2 games in the NCAA tournament, because again, that Baylor team was good and you beat them by 23. So it's hard not to feel confident in this Duke team, but it's okay in the grand scheme of it all. Are they the best team remaining in the NCAA tournament right now? Would you say Duke through 2 games and just the way that the Sweet 16 lays out, is Duke the best team remaining in the NCAA tournament?
Are you saying just based on potential matchups?
Yeah.
And getting to the Final Four? Yeah. I wouldn't put them above Florida right now.
Okay.
Just because I do think that Florida, if they have to match up with Arkansas, or maybe it's potentially Texas Tech. I'm not looking at my bracket, but I feel like Florida. I think that Duke, Alabama, their athleticism and their style, that could potentially give Duke some problems. But I feel the same way about a BYU team who's playing really, really well right now.
Right.
I would still have Florida there as that team. I think it was really good for Florida to get that wake up yesterday.
Yeah.
And to have to deal with adversity. You're on a neutral court. Things aren't going your way. Everything has been going so smooth through them, minus the road game at Georgia. But through the SEC tournament and now beyond, and playing as, they're hearing it, you're the best team in the country, you're playing the best basketball, to get challenged by a 2-time defending champion who had won how many consecutive NCAA tournament games, to have the crowd feeling it and being behind UConn, and then late in that game to flip the switch when you're not playing your best basketball and find a way to win. That was huge.
Yeah, and I think that, so when you look at the Kentucky-Tennessee matchup as well, I think what Tennessee has done through the 2 games that they played, they're letting like they're initiating everything on the defensive side first. Like the offense would just kind of take care of itself. But the pressure that they put on a lot of these teams on defense, it starts with Zakai Ziegler, somebody that we've seen for the past 4 seasons. Literally, like he's a 2-time defending, SEC Defensive Player of the Year for a reason. And I think that what he's been able to do, I mean, he's a smaller guard. He's, he doesn't mind. He doesn't have to go out there and give you 20 points, but he'll give you a good 12 to 15. But what he does on the defensive side, even as a guard, he's like the anchor of the defense. Like everybody else starts to, they have to make sure their eyes are up. And when you're dribbling around him, he's quick to, steal it from you. He plays the passing lanes. And I think for Kentucky, it's funny to see how Kentucky as a number 3 seed still doesn't feel like they're there yet, but yet they're in the Sweet 16. Like I look at this Kentucky unit from all the seasons when Cal was there and even in years past of just history tells you that Kentucky is going to make a deep run, but yet you still don't feel confident. I'm not going to say a lot of people don't, but like I just don't truly feel confident in this bunch. But there's a reason why they're there, because even when you look at some of the games and even in their SEC regular season, like they have a loss to Arkansas on their resume. So it's okay when they're on. Oh yeah, they can beat you by 30, but when they're off, it's like okay, they're too talented to be this inconsistent.
They can't have off nights and not having a true point guard.
Mm-hmm.
Defending has been a problem for Kentucky at times, but they can certainly outscore you. They got the athletes to do it. But if I'm a Kentucky fan, I'm absolutely stoked that I've got this team, this particular team is in the Sweet 16, and then you can live with it. You're playing you're playing against a team that you beat twice during the regular season. So if it's that Tennessee team that gets by you, I think that the future's bright for Mark Pope and addressing some of those things that have kind of plagued this team, which finds itself as one of the final 16 teams in the country. I never expected them to be here. I thought that we would see Kentucky. I thought the game with Troy was a little bit tricky, but maybe the game with Illinois, what will we get? And maybe that was, and so much of this is matchups and styles. And if one team's particular style, where I think that just given history and you look at the matchup, I think Michigan did Auburn a favor. Michigan did something that Bruce Pearl has struggled to do and Auburn has struggled to do with what they run and beating that Texas A&M team.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm an Auburn fan, I'd much rather play that Michigan team than that Texas A&M team again.
Yeah.
Because more so than anything is the mental.
Yep.
The mental hurdle that you have to overcome.
That's what I was going to say. I think mentally it's, okay, we see the logo. Like it's hard for me. And again, we saw the head-to-head. Texas A&M did beat them, but at no point did it really feel like Texas A&M was a better team than Auburn. But it's just the way that they play. Like they're like gnats, and that's why it was so puzzling how they allowed Michigan to continue to, get on runs, and they couldn't find a shot when they needed to put Michigan away. They kept giving them chances, and then Michigan just took it and ran with it. Especially late in the second half, it's okay. Buzz, you've done everything. You've actually hit some threes where, like the Texas A&M team could possibly find themselves in the Sweet 16. And then Michigan started chipping away until the point where they just blew the doors off of them. It's like, okay, well, if y'all going to keep giving us these opportunities, we're going to take full advantage of them. So it's funny that we're at this point now because we've seen the SEC in the regular season as a whole, but to see 7 of the 14 teams that were in the tournament make it to the Sweet 16, and each one of them could really have an argument of, they could be potentially playing for a Final Four spot. Like they could be in the Final Four and it not be, something wild. Like Ole Miss right now, you're kind of playing with house money anyway. It's okay. Well, a lot of people didn't really expect us to be in this position. We're here. Why can't we be in the Elite Eight Final Four? Why can't we do it? Now, I do think if you end up matching up with Auburn, it's kind of, can we get over the hump? Because we've seen, them play them tough in Oxford, end up falling. But then you caught them when they were absolutely blistering hot and you lose by 30. And you match up with them in the SEC tournament where it felt like nobody could make a shot. So it's, okay, if we match up with them again, how can we get over the hump? And I think that it makes an interesting discussion that, okay, it's not far-fetched that a lot of these teams in the SEC, and again, with Coach Cal in Arkansas, they just play. They don't mind an ugly game. They don't mind it being a 55-44 win. Okay, so be it. And Cal's like, I don't care how we get it done. Let's just get it done. And like you said, Styles win these games. And I think for Arkansas, the number that you have as far as seeding goes at this point doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter at this point. No. I think that it's all about what you do that game and how you play and the style in which you play. Like if Texas Tech doesn't make their shots, they don't find a way to make their shots. Arkansas is like, okay, well, we'll hit this thing running. We'll just be some athletes and say, hey, let's just go play on the blacktop. And we're going after loose balls. We're getting those offensive rebounds off free throws. It's now that Arkansas is here, it's okay. They can actually make a run.
Well, it feels like that first weekend, especially for Auburn and getting past that first weekend. Mm-hmm. Maybe for a lot of these teams, and we talked to Brendan Haywood, who was on the call with Nestler out in Denver for that A&M and Michigan and that part of the region. And he was at North Carolina in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. And some of those teams, and he said he remembers it, and it was a Weber State team that he can remember getting ready for and being one of those higher seeds. And the coaches preached to them all week about, look, don't look at the name on the jersey. Don't look at the seed. Mm-hmm. These guys, they are capable. They've got a guy, and I'm trying to remember the name of the player. They said he's 6'6". He'd be 6'8" if he had a neck. And he said he can remember during practice all that week they're running around like they have no necks and their jerseys are above. And that guy goes out and he scores like 40, and they get eliminated. And he said but it's so hard for these coaches to preach it. But your guys, they can nod their heads all they want.
Yeah.
But until maybe they see their life flash before their eyes. I think now that we're in the Sweet 16, now that you have a week to prepare, you realize there's another team that's here for a reason. Mm-hmm. You're not overlooking them. Now a lot of it's either conference champion, regular season, or tournament champion you're going to be facing. So I don't think at this point anybody overlooks anybody. Alabama will be totally dialed in to BYU. Alabama, Nate Oates, they can watch BYU for the last 5 games and realize that they're going to have all that they want with 1, that team. Auburn with Michigan. And you think about some of the tie-ins and the storylines. KT Harrell, who played at Auburn.
Sure did.
He's director of basketball operations at Michigan. Trey Donaldson.
Yeah.
Played point
for
familiar. Auburn.
Yeah, he's familiar.
Namari Burnett, Alabama. Transfer. There's some storylines there.
Oh, boy. So you're telling me there's an upset brewing?
No, I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you that I think that those will be talked about during the broadcast, and it's just some interesting storylines. Yeah. And then Danny Wolf, the guy who played for Yale, that beat Auburn in the first round last year.
So you tell me that
I don't think Michigan takes Auburn by surprise, is what I'm telling you.
There we go. 205-834-9450. Continue on the other side with your text message, your calls. Keep it locked right here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. 8:38 here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell, Landry Roberts, John Saber here with you. As guys, take a little spring break, a little vacation, a little rest and relaxation. Bet you Cole's probably watching some tape now.
Think so?
Absolutely. 1,000%.
What, UFL?
That does kick off this week as our Birmingham Stallions will be in Washington, D.C. to take on the D.C. Defenders.
We got Major League Baseball. If you're not a Dodgers or a Cubs fan, which I guess you got the early sampling there in Tokyo.
Yeah. And I still don't understand why.
But no, we got Major League Baseball starting this week.
Opening day, what, Thursday?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yep.
How are you feeling?
Oh, I'm optimistic like I am every year.
Absolutely.
But plenty of room for pessimism. It's 162 game stretch.
Yeah.
I'll check Strider. He went out through an inning yesterday.
Look good?
Had some Ks, had some hits and earned runs.
Okay.
That's all right.
Hey, it happens. It's early.
Just basically had to replace his elbow.
Yeah, that is true. I'll check about the All-Star break and see how you're feeling.
Yeah. What about your Reds? You still on board?
Listen, we have the most exciting player outside of Shohei Ohtani in baseball right now, and Ellie De La Cruz. So
yeah, sells tickets.
He does.
He'll be a Dodger before too long.
Yeah, no. We'll keep it.
No, he seems like a Yankee.
No.
He does seem like a Yankee. You know what?
No,
Good point.
They presented the facial
He'll be a Yankee or or a Dodger.
No, he is signing a lifetime contract with the Cincinnati Reds.
Yeah, look,
this is the most exciting.
Nobody does that. Nobody does that in Atlanta. Nobody does that in Cincinnati. Everybody holds out the golden parachute and they wait for the call for the Dodgers to pay astronomical money, or every now and then the Padres to give you like a 20-year deal. Fernando Tatis.
Yeah, but a lot of exciting news this week, man. Of course, with Sweet 16.
Isn't it hard to believe, though, with all of the tournament trends that we think about?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, the 12-5 matchup, and it did kind of dawn on me that we have chalk that's holding for the Sweet 16 in that field, but 11 seed or lower, so 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, this is the first time since 2007 we have not had an 11 or higher or lower, however you want to look at it.
Oh,
in the NCAA tournament field of 16.
Okay.
So all 4 ones, the 3 number 2s, that meaning Tennessee, Alabama, Michigan State, St. John's being the one that got eliminated. You've got 2 number 3 seeds in Texas Tech and Kentucky. You had 3 seed Iowa State that got bounced.
Yep.
And then what was the other 3 seed? Help me out. That lost to, was that Illinois? That lost to Kentucky. Were they a 3 seed?
No,
Kentucky's a 3 seed.
Yeah,
or Kentucky's a 3 seed. That was a 3-6. I'm trying to think about the other 3 seed that was eliminated. But 2 3 seeds are left.
Iowa State, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Should have known that when that made my
with BYU.
game.
That's right.
Yeah.
2 number 4s left in Purdue and Maryland, or excuse me, 3 number 4s left, Purdue, Maryland, and Arizona. Michigan would be the lone 5 seed, and then BYU, Ole Miss, the 6 seeds, and there comes Coach Cal in Arkansas, number 10 seed.
Sometimes it doesn't matter. It's all about who you match up with, man. And that's another thing, too. Like, who is this, quote-unquote, Cinderella this year? Or is there not one? Did she not get invited to the ball this time?
Well, Arkansas would be that Cinderella right now.
But it's still Coach Cal.
Yeah, BYU, nobody really saw that coming. We've seen some BYU teams in the past, but that's typically a team we hear a lot about. Look how good they are from 3. Look at their style.
Right.
It's probably an altitude game, and then we don't see BYU past the first couple of rounds or even the first round.
Yeah. Yeah, like now I'm kind of cool with the chalk flying because
Ole Miss or Arkansas, though.
That's what I was going to say.
BYU, those would be the 3 stories, I think.
Yeah.
If they were to make the Final Four.
Because of the fact it's because they're 6 seed. Like I'm looking at their seeding and it's like, okay, is it really a quote unquote Cinderella story if they were to make it? I think just because of who they are. And again, like we've got a chance to watch pretty much every SEC team. So with Arkansas being there, it's okay, yeah. But also it's John Calipari. And it's
But if Duke does not make the Final Four, if Florida doesn't make the Final Four, there will be people that lose their minds.
Yeah.
I don't think if Houston falls or if Auburn falls out of the South, I think people will be able to rationalize it and say, well, we kind of saw that coming.
Mm-hmm.
With Auburn, maybe towards the later part of the year, and then with Houston, I think people would have a hard time with Florida and Duke not being in the Final Four.
yeah. Especially with the way that they're playing. I think with Cooper Flag, like somebody made the comparison like he's on a Carmelo Anthony run. Again, I mean that's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, but who's this Jerry McNamara?
Yeah, like who's, I guess, Proctor from yesterday, if he gets hot. But I do agree with you that it would be very shocking, especially the way that they played early
Isn't
on.
it crazy, though, how it's game to game?
Yeah.
Whereas I will be the first to admit, I saw that line come out with Creighton and Auburn when it came out on Friday. And I said I would jump all over Creighton plus the 9 points.
Right.
Just based on what we had seen from Auburn, and they're having players only meeting. They had one at night, they had the morning. You got guys calling guys out, and you're just wondering how they're going to respond. And then Bruce Pearl, you just don't like the body language. And then you get Auburn that comes out. They play inspired basketball. It took withstanding Creighton's best 3-point shooting effort that they've had all season, and they do it. You think about the first 10 minutes of that game. The first 18 points that Creighton scored all came from three. All threes. And I'm a buddy of mine, John, who you know, and he's a big diehard. And some of his texts, they're just they're. He is that fan. He is that fan that he is always standing on the edge of the building, ready to jump. Always. And I told him, I said, John, I don't know what to tell you, but if Creighton or any other team in this tournament shoots it from 65% from three, they will beat everyone that they play. And for Auburn to do what they did in the second half, limiting some of those opportunities, thought that was big. So now going into this game versus Michigan, if I'm an Auburn fan playing in Atlanta, you're going to have your home crowd that's going to be there behind you. I'm sure Michigan will have some folks there too, and there'll be some Auburn haters that'll show up there at State Farm Arena. But you look at that, and then potentially a Michigan State. I don't know if you play your best should beat that Michigan State team. Whereas if I'm an Alabama fan, how are you feeling against BYU? I feel like Alabama, they can get it done versus BYU, but an Alabama-Duke matchup. Are Alabama fans, are you looking at it like Final Four or bust? Or, to this point with this team and certain things we've seen this season, look, if they fall to Duke, not that you'd be happy with it, but that would be understandable. I don't know. That's what I want to hear from our listeners. What are the expectations? That's why I asked Paul, who would be more disappointing? And I agree with Paul, just based on the narrative and how things have gone, and Auburn sitting atop the AP and the coaches poll for 6-7 straight weeks.
Yeah.
That would be the bigger disappointment if they didn't make it, but maybe Alabama fans feel differently.
800-239-9569, 205-834-9450. Yeah, Alabama fans, how are you feeling? If your team does fall in the Elite Eight potentially, what would you think? Auburn, is it pretty much get to the national championship, Final Four, or bust? Want to hear from you. 205-834-9450. Your text message, your calls on the other side. Keep it locked right here on Mac and Cube. 8:50 here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell, Landon Roberts, John Saber here with you, getting you set for Richard Hendricks, who will be talking some March Madness with us at the top of the hour. Want to hear from you, 205-834-9450. Your text message, your calls, always welcome here on Jocks 94.5. Just expectations now since Auburn and Alabama both in the Sweet 16. Of course, we want your teams to win. You want your team to win. But if in the event that you fall this weekend, would it still be a successful season overall for both Alabama and Auburn? Getting some reaction on the Jocks text line. Landon, what is it looking like, my brother?
Texts are rolling in, and Steven from Lexington, Kentucky, we appreciate you listening on the Jocks 94.5 app. He says he gives Coach Mark Pope a lot of credit thus far. He said, we're all ecstatic up here in Lexington. It's going to be hard to beat Tennessee a third time this year. Go Cats.
Okay.
Appreciate Steven. Thanks for listening. This one rolling in from the Alabama side of things. If Alabama can get past BYU, it'll be a successful season given the injuries. That being said, they can win the whole thing. That's Collins from Pell City.
Okay. Roll Tide.
It's all about matchups, right? Nick from North Birmingham. Morning, guys. Wild fact on the Sweet 16. First time Auburn and Alabama have been to the Sweet 16 in the same tournament since 1985. Paul brought that up. If Auburn doesn't get to the title game, then I see it as a failure with this season. However, I would say the success should feed to the football team for them to get to the playoffs too. WDE. I don't know if maybe it is tournament game. I think Auburn getting to the Final Four, that would be a huge accomplishment to be able to do it again. I do go back, and I'm not making excuses for anyone, but just to get to a Final Four. Look how many legendary coaches had success in the tournament, but were able to get to one Final Four or never get to a Final Four. Rick Barnes, the last time that Rick Barnes got to a Final Four, it's been 22 years. 22 years. He's been waiting to get back.
Oh, boy.
Then you get a guy like Tom Izzo that has been there multiple times, but when's the last time his team won a national title?
It's tough, man.
So getting there, and I just look at it differently than I do the college football playoff. And now, as the season has evolved, I look at this Auburn team, and not saying they're not capable of winning it all, or if they do match up with Florida, they would have to win 2 games. But if they matched up with Florida in the Final Four, not saying they couldn't do it, but I don't think that I would view it as a disappointment for Auburn or Alabama.
Yeah.
Auburn, I think now at this point, knowing what we know, what I know, well, we all know it's not like but Auburn getting short of getting to a Final Four would be a disappointment. I think Alabama getting by BYU, you get beat by Duke, following up the year, you just tip your hat because Duke's a great team.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I look at it too, is depending on who you play in these situations. Like if Auburn messes
By the way,
around,
if Auburn was on that side of the bracket, I would feel the same way.
Exactly. Like it's all about who you fall to. Like I think Alabama is the better team going against BYU this weekend. Also think Auburn is a better team going against Michigan. But it's not like it would be surprising if they did fall. But now it would be disappointing. But I think Elite Eight, Final Four, that's kind of where, like you've made it this far. Now I understand that you want to be, championship or bust, but also you're going to be playing the best of the best at that point. Like at that point, it's kind of just separating and how, I guess you would say, mentally tough that you are at that point, because you don't have to, as long as you got one more point than the other team, you survive and advance. That's all that really matters. But it just doesn't feel like even both Alabama and Auburn, doesn't feel like it's a national championship or bust type mentality to have right now.
With these teams, it felt like Sweet 16, it was Sweet 16 or bust at the minimum.
Right.
But for Auburn and for Alabama in particular, feel like you expect more. But Sweet 16 seems like that's maybe the equivalent of getting into a college football playoff now with the expanded field. And it would be close, less number of teams, and maybe we eventually get to 16.
Right.
But being there in the conversation, when you go back in the history books or you go into the arena, you go to Coleman or you go to Neville, and you see the banner and you remember that Sweet 16, it just rings a lot different than round of 32.
Yeah.
Or NCAA tournament bust or a berth.
Right. Yeah, like the Sweet 16, it means a little bit more. And I think that for these teams in particular, and when you look at just the field of it as well, now if you do advance into the Elite Eight Final Four, the teams that you're going to match up with, there's a chance that you've already played them anyway. And for Alabama, You're seeing Tennessee again. Like, it is a potential you could see Tennessee. It's a potential you could see Kentucky again. But it's going to be tough sledding if you have to match up, if you're going to match up with Duke as well, because of what Duke has been able to do. And then again, if we get a championship where Duke and Auburn play each other, we've seen that matchup head to head. Duke took that one early on in the season. And from those two things you take into an account, again, if Houston makes it and Auburn matches up with Houston, we've seen Auburn beat Houston. So I understand how it's okay, as long as we can get to a championship against a team that we've potentially already played anyway. You want revenge over Duke if you do match up with them. You definitely want to show Houston again, like, hey, that first time we played y'all wasn't a fluke. Like, it was not a fluke. We went down there and we beat y'all. So I think that because of what you see on the other side, if you make it that far, you do feel confident that, okay, we can pull this off.
I'm just looking at Michigan's schedule, and you got to be careful. You look at it as common opponents, but it's a Michigan team that lost to Arkansas by 2 in the Jimmy V Classic. Lost to Oklahoma.
Oh, boy.
In Charlotte.
Hey. So you telling me Auburn's licking their chops this weekend?
They got beat at Minnesota in overtime. Lost to Purdue. Meanwhile, a Purdue team that's playing really good basketball right now, and one of our listeners said they got them in the Final Four. Do you remember Auburn was up on that Purdue team at Legacy by, 31-33?
Yeah.
I think that was maybe the most complete game I've seen Auburn play this season. They ended up winning by 18.
An ugly 18.
But that team, an 8-point dog heading in to take on Houston.
I'm telling you, man.
I kind of like the Boilermakers plus the points, to be honest with you.
Okay. You degenerate. Richard Hendricks on the other side. Keep it locked. Mac and Cube. 9 o'clock on this Monday morning. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell alongside Landrum Roberts. Got the twos in. Greg and
What
Cole.
are you talking about? I came out of the portal.
You came out of the yeah. That is true. You
Not a backup. I'm just like a mercenary.
I got you. Utility infielder.
He's Caden Proctor because he'll be right back tomorrow, just like that.
Yep. Just tell me where the parking is. Isn't that what they failed to mention to Caden Proctor when he went to Iowa? Poor guy.
He's in there. It took 3 weeks, and he's like, you know what? Not really feeling this. Let me head
be
on
a
back.
millionaire.
Let me head on back.
Caitlin Clark's a senior? I can only see her this. Okay, no, never mind. Thought I'd get at least 2 years out of this.
Oh, man, we're having some fun. And we also have our friend Richard Hendricks to join us. He's brought to us every single Monday by our friends at Pizza Pools on Fanatics Live. If you're looking to get into your sports cars breaks, sign up with Pizza Pools at Fanatics Live. Richard, man, this is the most exciting time of the year for you, tournament time. What are some of the bigger takeaways that you've taken away from the opening weekend of NCAA tournament?
Well, I think the biggest thing is it's been, really good basketball, and which has been a lot of fun to watch. Particularly, you talk about what the teams in the state have been able to do. Alabama getting it done, getting to the Sweet 16, hobbled as you thought in the first game with Grant Nelson, him coming back into the game. That was something that I thought was important. That power forward position for Alabama, if they get it done with Grant Nelson or by committee, is going to be so important. And Auburn trying to get back into their groove. The SEC with 7 teams in the Sweet 16, to me, that's the biggest takeaways from it. It's been a lot of fun to see how they perform because I thought it was a lot of pressure on the league.
Richard, what do you attribute as being the biggest factor for? We've got Arkansas in the Sweet 16 as a 10 seed, and you look at NIL, and reportedly they had maybe one of the highest NIL as far as roster totals coming into the season from folks there in Fayetteville. But Coach Cal in Arkansas, they're a 10 seed. But some of those magical stories that we're used to with March Madness with maybe an 11 seed or a 12 seed or beyond, they're not in the Sweet 16. How much do you believe that NIL and the transfer portal has played a part in affecting some of those mid-majors rosters?
Well, I think that's a good question. And it's interesting because when I look at the teams now that are the traditional powers and that they have the resources to get good players, their rosters are made of players who were just on these mid-major teams. So it's not as if that the mid-major coaches are not doing a good job evaluating talent and developing them, but they've been able to be poached to come over to the bigger teams. It's something that I think that was a joy to watch, where you saw a veteran team at a lower level that has played together for years finally get a chance to show up in the big stage with everyone watching, and you can see what they're able to do. I mean, that Drake team was an example of that. They went in the first round against Missouri from the SEC. That's a team that's got a lot of guys who've come from the Division II level. That continuity plays a huge role, and they were able to play a tough game against Texas Tech with an opportunity to move to the Sweet 16. So I do miss that Cinderella story, the veteran players, and you'll see a little bit of it. But I guess you have to say that it is something of a positive for the players, because if you were a late bloomer out of high school, now you have an opportunity to be on a level that you could say that you really should have been on as your career starts to move forward. So it's some pros and cons, but I do miss some of those upsets that you saw in the past.
And Richard, for looking at it from an Auburn's perspective, Janai Broome hasn't necessarily been the player of the year in the past 2 games early on in the NCAA tournament. Do you think that it's worth questioning if the pressure's starting to get to him because if he had to carry the load so much during the season, or is it actually a benefit when everybody else is elevating their game in spite of Janai Broome not being what he's been in the regular season so far?
Well, it's really hard to keep that same level of play throughout the entire season, especially when you're the number one guy, and particularly when you're the big man. It's a lot of miles on your body. It's a lot of banging down low, and you start to wear down. And I think also when you look at the teams that Auburn has played in the recent games, it's been a real physical challenge for him. And Creighton in the last round, you're dealing with a 4-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year and Ryan Kalkbrenner, who made it very difficult for Janai Broome. It won't be any easier for him in the next round. Vlad Golden and the bigs that they have in Michigan with size. Broome is really one of the top players and more polished post players that you have in the game today. But in a game in a style where you don't have traditional post players playing at the way that they have in generations before, he may not get the reps and the depth playing against a bigger front line all season long. But he's a phenomenal player. I expect him to kind of regroup and kind of retool some things as it gets tougher and tougher. But it's going to be a challenge, and it definitely weighs on you as the season goes on as a big.
Richard, I kind of want to dive into that matchup because you just spoke about it with what Auburn's going to see with Michigan. They get their tip time. It's going to be late there at State Farm on Friday in Atlanta, 8:39 Central Standard Time. But Michigan, you mentioned the bigs, what they do stylistically and personnel-wise. How will they differ from what Auburn just saw with Creighton in the round of 32?
Well, it could be similar, but, Dusty May he has a really good team. He's been to a Final Four before. I believe his name is Wolf, is a 7-footer who's going to be playing a lot of point forward. That's going to be something that's going to be very, very – it's going to be a big challenge for Auburn. Trey Donaldson, who was an Auburn player, has been playing really good basketball as of late. That will be something that he will be motivated to play well against Auburn. But the way that they have a 7-footer that can handle the ball, slow the game down, play at his own pace, he can post up, he can facilitate. Now, the key will be if he can hit shots from the outside against Auburn will be very important. But this is a team that has really good positional size. And Auburn doesn't run into too many teams that can have them trumped in that area with Broom and Cardwell down low. You have Miles Kelly, who's 6'6" on the perimeter, and their long Baker Mazzara. They can all guard their mans individually, which makes it very, very difficult on other teams because you don't have to be in rotation as much for Auburn. So it's one of those things that this will be a major challenge. When you get to the Sweet 16, there's no longer any easy matchups. Every game is going to be hard. And this is the way it's supposed to be. You're going to have to earn it from here on out.
Richard Hendricks here every single Monday at this time, presented by our friends at Pizza Pools at Fanatics Live. And Richard, just you look at the whole landscape, who do you think is the most dangerous team left in the tournament right now?
Well, I'll tell you, Duke surely looked good. I mean, that was a tough Baylor team. That played really well in the first round, a tough game against Mississippi State, but they came out. You see the positional size that they have with Malawach down low, the strength of Con Knipple, Cooper Flagg, of course, being maybe the college player of the year, which I think he probably needs. It's going to be between him and Janai Broom. I think it's going to be a question of which one do you like, the youth or the experience, because I think you can't go wrong with either pick, but you got a guy who really should be in high school who's up for that National Player of the Year. I think that is unbelievable to be doing that at 17, 18 years old as compared to a veteran. But Duke's looking really, really strong. Proctor shooting the ball from the outside. They really look like they're a team that is the team to beat in this tournament. But I'll tell you this, in tournament play, your previous game doesn't have anything to do with the next one. I think a lot of people think about momentum being so important, but sometimes you can be overconfident and the next team has a different game plan on you, and you feel the pressure change throughout the course of the game because you know it's win or go home.
Richard, when you look at 6th seed in BYU, and some would argue that they're playing the best basketball of anyone in the country, how they match up as far as individual players stylistically against Nate Oates and what the Tide will present there in Newark, what do you see as being the key for Alabama in advancing to the Elite Eight to eventually maybe play a Duke?
Well, I think Alabama has to continue what they do, and that's if they can get out and push the tempo. I think they have to do a much better job at shooting quality shots. There were times in the last game, particularly with Mark Sears, when they had a lead and they were pushing the tempo and they were shooting early shots and missing. You still have to find a quality shot, even if it is early in the shot clock. Shooting it and missing it against teams that can control tempo is the same as a turnover. So if you have to be able to understand how to value the clock. But if Alabama gets a lot of production from the inside play, which they've been getting from Clifford Amore, he's been really phenomenal when you talk about that pick and roll action and the alley-oops. Grant Nelson has come in the game and made a difference. Mo Diabate knocking down the shots. I look at that, like I said, that power forward slot is going to be key for Alabama if they can win that matchup. Now, BYU is going to be playing. They're not going to have a team. Obviously, you have a Richie Saunders who can fill it up. But they have a good defensive player in Kebaketa, who will be down low trying to block shots. I think Alabama can neutralize his impact. He's not a good free throw shooter, not a technical low post player. But this is a team that has really good positional size that can give a challenge to Alabama. And they're playing good basketball, and being the lower seed, listen, you're playing with house money. I mean, because you're in the Sweet 16 and you're hoping to pull off an upset. But this will be another tough challenge that Alabama will have. I think it'll be similar to the challenge they had in the last round.
And when you look at this Arkansas team with Coach Cal in year one, did you really expect Arkansas to find themselves in the situation that they're in? And could they potentially be in the Final Four?
I did not. And I had this Arkansas team early on the season when they were had not won a game in SEC play. And they seemed like they were a team that was out of sorts. The confidence was down. Boogie Flan had just got hurt. But this team athletically is one of the best teams in the tournament field. They can step toe-to-toe with anyone. They've had some shooting woes. They haven't been able to find the stroke from the outside or just in the creativity within their offense. But what they have is the ability to guard their man. They can be very strong on the offensive rebounding, and they've been resilient. I mean, when you have so many injuries and you have a limited roster where they're only playing 7 to 8 players and Adu Thero has been out since mid-February, it's been remarkable that they've been able to pull it off and get to the Sweet 16. But this is a team that I thought was not even going to make the NCAA tournament, and they have been able to turn things around quickly. And they can win their next game. I mean, this is a game against Texas Tech that they can win. Arkansas can easily be back in the Elite Eight. It can be 6 teams in the SEC in the Elite Eight, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Richard, you might have to think for a second, but who is that team that is missing from the Sweet 16 that you thought the way that they were playing, whether it was encompassing the entire regular season, the conference tournament, or just down the stretch? Who is that team, one of the higher seeds that was eliminated that you just can't believe they're not there?
Memphis. Memphis is that team. I definitely thought it would have been a Florida-Memphis matchup in the Sweet 16. Penny Hardaway has done a phenomenal job at Memphis in a program where he started off getting a lot of AAU talent. He was coaching AAU and got a lot of young talent. And he's had to make a transition in what he's doing within his staff. He's brought in Mike Davis, former coach at Indiana and Alabama alum, who's helped him out. And they've done a tremendous job. They dominated the American Conference this season. He's got 2 big-time players in P.J. Haggerty, who scores over 21 points a game, and a big in Dame Danger, who's a double-double threat every single night. So that was a surprising loss that I saw for him in the first round against Colorado State in that 12-5 game. I would have thought they would have been in the Sweet 16 and been able to make a little bit more noise, particularly in a one-bid league that they felt that they were not getting as much respect. I thought he would have been more, had his team ready to play to be able to get to the Sweet 16 to show the toughness of that league. A tough league that has UAB in it that's been playing really good basketball as well.
Richard, man, we appreciate you hopping on with us this morning. We're filling in for Cole and Greg. It seems like we know a little bit more ball than when we started 2 hours ago, man. We appreciate you hopping on this morning, man.
Thanks, Richard.
Yeah, y'all doing a great job. Thank y'all for having me. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. That's
Appreciate
Richard
it.
Hendricks. Brought to you by Pizza Pulls on the Higginbotham Hotline. You deserve solutions that are built for you. Higginbotham is your one-source solution for insurance, financial, and HR services. We'll continue the conversation on the other side, just taking a look at the Sweet 16 from every perspective. Get your reaction, 800-239-9569, 205-834-9450. Text messages and your calls. Always welcome here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Keep it locked right here on Jocks 94.5. 9:18 here on McElroy Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell alongside Landrum Roberts filling in. Appreciate you hopping on early this morning today, man.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been fun.
No, it's been great.
Yeah.
Some of the things I'm up at this time, but I'm typically not out and about at this time unless I have something like got to make a run to get coffee or something. But I did notice that there's a huge water main that busted in Homewood, kind of around Cole's little section or neighborhood. So if you're out there and you're listening and your water pressure's a little bit low, then contact Birmingham Waterworks.
Yeah, see, you're doing the Lord's work early this morning, man. But hey, got to keep people updated.
And I couldn't help but thinking this is probably going to make my water bill go up somehow, some way.
Yeah, how do you know Satan didn't do that? Sure. Satan may have shut that water main.
Could have been.
That is true.
Yep.
I didn't think of it that perspective.
Yep.
Hey, 205-834-9450. Jock's text line phone line's always open. Landry, we got some action on the Jock's text line.
Text line is open, D, and we will go to expectations for Alabama fans. This one coming in. Well, being a diehard Alabama fan my whole life, 45 years, I can't be mad. This is the best run in basketball over the last 5 years. I remember Wimp's days from the mid-'80s, and he definitely had Bama rolling, but could never get us over the hump. Okay. Asking for Alabama fans, would it be a disappointment if you don't make the Final Four, if Alabama doesn't make the Final Four? Tanner says, already making excuses for the inevitable loss for Bama, LOL. They've had the easiest draw out of everybody in the tournament and has played down to their competition. Not a good recipe going forward in the tournament.
They've had the easiest draw?
That's what he said, yes.
I mean, I feel like Maryland played at a 12 and a 13 seed, but okay.
Right. Auburn opened up with Alabama State.
I feel like Texas A&M had a 11 seed and a 14 seed, but
yeah.
Okay. All right.
Is he talking about from a 2-seed perspective? Because I don't know. I mean, St. Mary's, they presented their own challenges.
Right.
That's true. All the 2 seeds have made. Oh, wait. Yeah, they didn't. Okay.
I mean, as it turns out, Robert Morris, they might have given him a little bit of a better game.
Yeah, right.
That game was more in question than I thought St. Mary's in Alabama was.
Oh yeah, 1,000%.
At any point, did anybody feel like St. Mary's was going to win that game?
Not at all.
No,
not at all. But Robert Morris.
Morris got a little tricky.
Yeah, Grant Nelson had to put the cape on.
Yep.
Because I mean, he came in there.
But no, if I'm Alabama playing that BYU team right now, nope.
No. Because they get hot. Like, it's be lights out. I don't necessarily think they had the easiest draw, though.
We'll continue with the text. That was just from one of our listeners. Doug says, AU man here. AU cuts down the nets or bust when you have the National Player of the Year in this deep roster, SEC champ, historically best ever conference, gotta close the deal.
Hey, but I do like that the expectations are that high, though. Like, I do respect that because of the fact that we hadn't seen, at least not in my lifetime, that Auburn even really sniffed it like this. And like the expectation is to win the national championship.
Well, yeah, because you go back to the Final Four run that they had with Harper and Bryce Brown and those cats. Look at what you had to do. Your second round game was against Kansas.
Yeah.
And I know there were a lot of people, that was a coin flip game. Is Auburn is a magical run going to continue?
Mm-hmm.
Then you go to North Carolina in the Sweet 16, and that's when Okeke goes down. They handle their business. And then another rematch with Kentucky to get you to the Final Four. This one sets up much different, as you're not a 5 seed, you're a 1 seed.
Right.
And given it, if chalk holds and if Auburn plays to the level we think Auburn can play, they should beat Michigan on Friday. And they should beat either Ole Miss or Michigan State on Sunday. So the expectation for me is to be there. But I have seen the head-to-head with Florida, and I saw it at Neville Arena.
Right.
And Auburn will have to prove to me otherwise against that Florida team and the way that they're playing. And I know that yesterday it got a little hairy for Gator fans versus UConn. But if you watch that basketball game, that was UConn gave them their best shot. And Florida's, as far as I know, they're still alive.
1,000%.
You got to survive, right?
I'm here for it.
Robert throwing this out there. Folks don't understand. St. Mary's is a very good defensive team. The number one rebounding team in the nation. Alabama didn't have any easy draw. Alabama was number one in rebounding. There was a rebounding margin where St. Mary's was number one in the country. Seth Davis predicted Alabama to lose on Sunday. St. Mary's gave up 61 points per game. Alabama hung 80 on the Gales. Well, Alabama did what they had to do. Drake says, guys, I'm not going to lie. UConn gave me a scare. I think it gave a lot of people that had Florida in their bracket a scare. And if it was going to happen, don't let it happen against UConn.
Hurley.
Never hear the end of it. It's just the whole Big East. SEC overrated. Played real ball up here. Look at this 22-12 team. They just knocked off your best team, arguably your best team.
If we want to go back and do a little freezing cold take, this was everything Seth Davis said on the reveal show. He had Yale over A&M.
Oh boy,
he was leading the North Carolina wasn't it the Ram that he was leading around to the studio on the leash?
A little bit, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He had UC San Diego over Michigan.
Oh boy.
He had High Point over Purdue.
That's disgusting.
Utah State over UCLA.
Huh.
He had Oklahoma over UConn. But he did have Colorado State over Memphis. He did have McNeese over Clemson, which I feel like kind of everybody did.
Seth won a lot of upsets.
And he had BYU to the Elite Eight.
Okay.
So one's still maybe there. So a bunch of them, kind of fell flat. A couple he got right, and the one that, honestly, like everyone's bracket.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
that's the problem with picking upsets, though.
Yeah. And this year, I mean, just
you had
it didn't happen.
Like High Point, you mentioned that was a game, but it was eventually Purdue that was able to pull away.
Yeah.
McNeese, never saw that one coming. Clemson made it interesting in the final minute.
Right. But you only scored 13 at half.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Last night, though, with Colorado State, I thought for sure that Colorado State team, they would find their way in, but left time on the clock. Can't have it.
Yep.
Queen with a big jumper, baseline with a kiss.
Give me that.
The madness. We'll continue with your text, 205-834-9450. Zach texts and he says, Creighton's punk suburban kids have extremely punchable faces.
Oh, yeah, in Omaha, dog.
The freshman, what was it? McAndrew? Was that the freshman?
Yeah.
The guy that just could not miss?
Hot.
Well, it was he or Ashworth. Neither one of them could miss in the first half.
Nah.
You got to move those guys off the line, right?
Yeah.
We will continue with your text. Also, phone calls coming in, 800-239-WJOX. Our buddy Burr wants to chime in. Hey, Burr, how are you?
Hey, good morning, guys. Good morning. Happy Monday to you.
Hey, happy Monday. So you're off for spring break because the kids, they're off for spring break, right?
Well, that far, but I'm a caterer, so I'm working this morning on a couple of jobs. But, man, when I saw you two on there, I had to call my favorite two morning guys. You know,
hey, what's happening?
Were always my favorite crew. You know you were. Hey, no offense to Conrad and Damon, y'all guys, you do a great job too, but you guys are my favorite. So it's good to see you guys.
Thank you.
Together again. But yeah, just wanted to say that, but also I'm loving the March version of Grant and Amore that I'm seeing in Alabama. These guys are playing with some real stuff that I haven't seen all year long. I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing of that. And also want to say the SEC guys, we got to pull this out and win this whole thing. It's going to be embarrassing if we get this many teams this far and we don't win it. And I'll even say that even includes Auburn, as much as I hate Auburn. We got to win it. I don't care who it is. But, guys, I just wanted to say hey to you. I'm just glad to see you guys on this morning.
I appreciate it.
Burr, thanks, man. Join us tomorrow at Social Taco on 3-Man Front.
Oh, I will be there. It's Don Don's birthday, right?
Yep.
Sure
I understand that there's some things cooked up for Don tomorrow. Yep.
Yeah. Y'all be good.
Burr,
I really appreciate it, man.
You'll be there too, Damien, right?
Huh?
You'll be there too, right?
I mean, it depends on how much work I got to do.
I mean, it's his birthday. He took you to a game, man. Come on
like
now.
I said, it just depends on the schedule. It depends on the schedule. I still have the job to do.
Don't worry. What they have, I understand that they have purchased for Don that will take all of his attention. So.
Oh, you said what? Oh, okay.
What's purchased? Oh, it's a surprise.
It's a surprise.
Okay.
That was a different W word. Oh, okay.
It's funny. So Bird brings up man, me and you, we used to start off early mornings up here.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like the Florida Georgia line of jocks, essentially.
Oh no, not that one.
We're the best.
But awful and overrated.
Whoa.
No. That's all you, buddy.
So we're like Outcast or something.
I don't know.
Legend 3
Let's
stacks.
just be us.
I'm just saying, man. We made a great duo. It was fun.
No, it was a lot of fun. A lot of sunrises with you.
Yeah, back when we could see the sun rise.
Yeah. I can't see it now.
Yeah, I can't see
it's
it.
just dark in here. It's just like solitary.
But it's fun though.
Yeah.
It has been fun.
This is like a super max. You can't see outside. No yard time.
No.
Just stay in your cell. No daylight.
No. But I mean, we pretty good. It's the first time I heard from Bird in a while too. Like, yeah.
Oh, we hear from him all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Got to stay in touch.
Yeah, we should. Man.
Reach out.
Yeah, just like, man, let me hear from you every now and then. 205-834-9450, 800-239-9569. We'll continue to look at what March Madness or if there's any madness left in the Sweet 16.
A lot of people mad at Queen traveling the 3 steps at the end of the game.
Listen, if they didn't call it, it didn't happen. Just put it like that. Not going to blame the stripes on that one.
It did look like 3 steps.
Yeah, it did. It may
Besides, that's kind of been how dribble drives have been in basketball for the last 10, 15 years.
He was not the only one that traveled this weekend and got away with it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, traveling. And think about carrying. Like, the ball literally pauses in these dudes' hands.
Yeah.
It's that Wilson, man.
I'm telling you.
It's got that extra bounce in it.
Listen, I'm not going to.
Guys putting it on their hips.
I don't want, the one thing I have an issue with is everything has to be reviewed. Like, I get sick and tired. So it was it was against Robert Morris when Aiden Holloway got that little tie up and the dude, like the guy that was rebounding, ended up getting a knee to the back of the head.
Yeah. And
they're like reviewing it for a flagrant. I was like, it's basketball, man. Like, it just falls.
Well, that's become common, and that's annoying. It's annoying to watch. It's especially, and I stay on him, and I know there's other officials, but Pat Adams. He loves the TV screen. And it was almost like he knew when the whip around coverage, when their game was getting tight, and I'm trying to remember what game it was. This was on Thursday. He knew that the game was getting tight and that the coverage was going to be on them. And immediately I turn it on or I flip over to that game and it's Pat Adams front and center. And he calls it's a late whistle. Yeah. Got to go to the monitor. He's got to get his 10 seconds in on the loudspeaker to explain to everybody if it's a common foul or an F1. Yeah, but for the most part, I can't really complain about the officiating. I think it's been pretty good.
Also, with that, could we get
Unless you're a Colorado State fan.
Could we get the football officials to teach the basketball officials how to speak on the mic? Because when it happens and they go to review, they'll go in and explain everything, like because it was this, or like in the tush push, like if they do it again, it can result like they let everyone know. That's where I was going on there is confirmed. And just walk away like it was nothing.
The official that we had yesterday in the Florida-UConn game, I liked him. He didn't even say Florida shooting. It was after a review. He didn't say Florida shooting free throws. He just called Walter Clayton by his name. Clayton's got foul shots. And you can tell he's from the South. Yeah.
But yeah, they are. I will give them a lot of credit. They hustling out there. Like there's a pool of sweat every time they come to the monitor. It's like, oh my gosh, like they just needed a time.
I don't know if this is across the board, but the referees, their uniforms, it's not a pant and a shirt. It's all one.
It's just a bodysuit. Like it's just really.
Yeah.
I hadn't noticed.
Most of them they don't have to tuck in the shirts.
Oh.
I don't know if they make different variations, but I know they do make one that's just like a bodysuit.
That's a nice observation, Landrum. I didn't even realize that.
Yep. Got Dorothy to order me one. I'm gonna sleep in one.
You're gonna be a referee for Halloween.
Do they make any that have the footies in them with the grips on the bottom? You walk around your house without slipping around.
And a little button around the back.
Exactly. The little patch, it's got the button, the little square.
A little flap like you're a kid, like you're the Coppertone baby. Yeah.
That's it.
205-834-9450, 800-239-9569. We continue with your calls, your text message on the other side. Keep it locked right here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Seems like Arkansas, they crept on into the Sweet 16 as a 10 seed. Talk about bracket busting. Welcome back into McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell, Landry Roberts here with you. And speaking of your brackets, you spend precious time working on your brackets, gathering information about the tournament favorites, and taking chances on your Cinderellas. You feel so good about your picks, and then boom, a 10 seed ends up in the Sweet 16 after knocking off a 2 seed. Looking at you, St. John's. Don't lose sleep over it. A Royal Betting Mattress won't let you lose any, no matter who wins, who loses, or what kind of day you have. You know you'll sleep like a baby every single night, all because of American-made, Alabama-made mattress from Royal Bedding. Handcrafted, double-sided mattress sets made right here in Pelham, Alabama. Visit Tom Ginger or TJ Vignale at Royal Bedding right there on Highway 31 near the big U-Haul store. Nothing stacks up to a Royal Bedding mattress. Do your back a great big favor before you buy a mattress. Compare and see for yourself when you visit our friends at Royal Bedding.
So we got the quick turnaround for Alabama and BYU.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama coming up on Thursday, 6:39 Central Standard Time is the tip up in Newark. Meanwhile, Auburn, they get their start time in Atlanta against Michigan, 8:39 Central Standard Time.
Oh,
so
boy.
9:39 tip. Yes, ish. Because you have Ole Miss and Michigan State that's going to go in the first part there.
Oh, boy.
In Atlanta. So between the Ole Miss and the Auburn fans, it'll be well represented. We know that Sparty, they will travel well. And I'm sure Michigan will travel well as well.
SEC.
Michigan State.
Oh, boy.
And having Auburn and Ole Miss.
Yeah. Now, if this was football, it would be an absolute brain blast.
Vegas has updated their lines. Alabama, 4.5-point favorite over BYU.
Okay.
The over-under in that game, 175 points.
Oh, boy.
That's a lot.
That's pretty thick.
If you don't keep up with over-unders and totals in college basketball, that's a lot. Compared to Maryland and Florida. Florida's a 6.5-point favorite. Over-under is 155.5. So 20 points, the difference in the total of that one. Arizona taking on Duke. Duke a 9-point favorite. Over-under 154.
9-point favorite?
9 points.
Oh, boy. For my bracket's sake, I need Arizona to pull this one off.
Arkansas and Texas Tech. Texas Tech a 5.5-point favorite. Over-under 147.5. So a little bit low scoring. Ole Miss, Michigan State. Michigan State, this was 2.5. It's bumped up to a half point. Michigan State, a 3-point favorite over Hotty Toddy.
Okay.
And the over-under at 147. Auburn is an 8-point favorite over Michigan. They opened up, I know on FanDuel Sportsbook, they opened up at 9.5 on Saturday night.
Okay.
After their game. It dropped down to 7.5. Now, currently, according to BetOnline, they're up to 8. Houston, an 8-point favorite over Purdue. That's interesting. That's one that I would bite on right now, is taking Purdue plus the points. So, interesting matchups. And then Tennessee, a 4.5-point favorite over Kentucky, a team that beat them twice during the regular season at home and once away.
Vegas must like Rick Barnes.
Look, Tennessee against that Wofford team, and that was going to be tough. But the way that Tennessee looked versus UCLA, whew. And I know that Richard told us it doesn't carry over game to game.
Yeah,
you got a whole new opponent. You got days in between, but that Tennessee team that will play. That will beat Houston.
Yeah, and that's where
they're knocking down shots from the outside.
Exactly,
and that's the key.
And Chaz Lanier,
and Gainey coming off the bench.
He is probably
he's the key.
Exactly. Outside of what Grant Nelson has done the first 2 games, I think when I look at everybody in the tournament of somebody that's really starting to bubble up of hey, I'm on the floor. That's Taha Pettiford, of course, with Auburn, but Gainey from Tennessee. It's if Chaz Lanier isn't looking for his shot or Zakai Ziegler is just trying to distribute, he's been that guy that's okay, if I'm open, I'm getting this thing. I'm shooting this thing. And his aggressiveness, getting to the rim and the defensive plays when you need them. He may be quiet all game long, but then all of a sudden there's a loose ball and he's the one that's on the floor going to get it. And it's he's been that X factor for Tennessee off the bench.
You got to have those other guys because they're going to take away what you do well, and who does it well. That's going to be their first point of emphasis. So for Auburn, and you heard McDermott, Creighton's coach, after the game saying, if you'd have told me we'd have shot that way, we hold Broome to under double digits.
Yep.
We shut down Miles Kelly based on what he did against Alabama State and how proficient he is from outside the arc. We felt pretty good about it. But what did you have? You had Denver Jones that stepped up. Tahad Pettiford goes for 23.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, Chad Baker-Mazara, who had not been Chad Baker-Mazara-like for the last, 4 or 5 games.
Mm-hmm.
He comes out and he scores 17. You weren't accounting for that. You have to have those other guys that step up, and that's why having guards that can shoot and making big shots when you have to have them at clutch times.
Yeah, and I think that's what's been helping Auburn this entire season. It's the depth that they have. You would have moments of it back even last season where Denver Jones kind of burst on the scene like a lot later into the season. It's like, okay, well, that's another thing you got to take into an account when you're playing Auburn. But it's the depth of the scoring as well as, like, again, Miles Kelly didn't have the game that he, usually has had over the last couple games. And when Denver Jones and the Tahad Pettifords start to step up and elevate, it's, oh man, we think like Coach McDermott said, if you hold Janai Broome to 8 points, you're thinking, oh yeah, like this is like we're going to find a way to win. But when those other guys start piecing things together, it's here we go.
Well, and you also go back to 2-point scoring, and Auburn was able to find it in the second half, and some of those just shots that Pettiford had, they were things of beauty in the lane. Auburn basketball fans remember a guy like Doc Robinson who made a living when he was at Auburn in not only running the point, but he would pull up in the lane, and that was his mid range, and it was almost money every single time. But how many bunnies did Auburn miss? Easy shots at the basket versus Creighton. If they can correct that and start getting some of those, and then think about if Miles Kelly has an on night, or if you get Janai Broome that goes double-double and he scores 16 points, but he's doing a solid job on the defensive end and hustling back. And then you get the production from those other guys. It looks a lot different. But to have those, whether it's a Grant Nelson who stepped up big for Alabama last year in their tournament run.
Right.
And where are these points going to come from? You're looking around, well, this guy's having an off night or they've shut this guy down. You have to have it come from somewhere.
Yeah. And I think the team that has a lot more of those situations kind of fares you well. And I think that's where I think Arkansas has kind of a little bit of an edge because they're not depending on just one guy. Like John L. Davis may give you some. I mean, Billy Richmond, for a guy that's coming off the bench, he's like a firecracker. Like he may give you 20-something points out of nowhere, but he's also going to do some of the garbage stuff. Like he's diving after loose balls. He's kind of just a scrappy guy with a lot of energy where he doesn't mind stepping up and guarding the star player because he's athletic enough to kind of go side to side. You got, Flan coming back from injury. You also have Carter Knox. The more I watch Arkansas, even in the moments in the regular season, it's, man, they're not as bad as their record says, but they also, I feel like every game that they win is almost an overachievement of, I didn't think they could find a way to get it done. And now they're in the Sweet 16 after knocking off a St. John's team that was pretty much like, hey, we're rolling out the red carpet for you. Like it's made for you to make it a deep run in the tournament.
It's just mind blowing that at the end of these next 2 rounds that we're going to get coming up this weekend, that we could have 6 of the 8 in the Elite 8, or I should say going into the Elite 8, but 6 of the Elite 8 coming from the SEC.
It just means more down here, dog.
Because my biggest fear is a proud SEC flag toter all season was the build up, the hype, 14 teams in, and then all of a sudden you get higher seeds that are laying duds. And to this point, I don't know. Yes, if you had, I said it would be a disappointment, less than 2, at least 2 SEC teams in the Final Four. But the SEC has served itself well. And I think the schedule that they played, we're wondering how much is that going to affect? Is that going to be a detractor where they played such a physical schedule, a lot like football and the grind that Kirby Smart talks about?
Right.
But it seems like it's helping these teams, especially in tight games where they got to turn it on. Florida, a great example.
Yeah, and like Bird brought up a great point that he as an Alabama fan is like, no, I want to see I want to see Auburn do well. Like I want to see the SEC. Now, why is it such an issue when I start cheering on all these SEC schools and everybody's got a problem with it? But
you do it at the wrong time.
How?
Huh?
I want the SEC
you do
to be
it in
successful.
you do it in the thick of the college football season. And and you're like a frog from lily pad to lily pad.
What's wrong? I want to see the conference have success.
You do, but
everybody but Texas A&M.
I feel like this is different.
How?
It's different.
It's
Maybe not
sport.
with Kentucky and Tennessee. Who are you pulling for?
Tennessee.
Why? Does the hypo disciple, that doesn't travel over to?
I just think Tennessee's a better team. I don't have any feelings towards it. I just think Tennessee's a better team.
But so you like Tennessee in that game?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to pull for Tennessee. I'm sorry, I thought you said Kentucky.
No, Tennessee.
Okay. I don't know.
Nah. Listen, I want the SEC.
John knows where I'm coming from. He witnesses it all the time. You and your
I was just overlooking
around.
the fact he said Row Tide while wearing his Auburn shirt. Which person would say that?
It slipped.
It didn't slip. You willingly responded to that. You wanted to.
It's muscle memory, man.
Are you going to announce your run for governor soon? Is that it?
No. I like the radio.
Can't get a Go Blazers in there?
Yeah, go Blazers. Yeah. I had a UAB shirt on yesterday.
Got one underneath this one.
Boy.
That's UAB baseball.
Had a baby.
Casey Dunn. Get it done.
Absolutely. We actually have a bad box score on the way. Let's see what Landon Roberts can do if he knows any of these mascots. Let's get with it. Bad box score when we return here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. $9.50 here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Appreciate Landon Roberts hopping on with me and John today, pulling the double duty.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been fun.
You realize on this date 41 years ago, 5 kids got detention.
Hey.
Had to,
Yep.
Yeah.
Molly Ringwald, I did not know about the relationship she had with John Hughes when she was 15 and he was 30.
What's the 5 kids got detention? What's the reference?
Breakfast Club.
Oh, hadn't seen the tape.
Of course you haven't. Great movie and a great pool by you, John.
Yeah. Just,
well, it's fine. I noticed you've been
yeah,
you're dropping the ball all over the place like you were
I think you'd enjoy that
St.
movie.
John's.
Breakfast Club?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Pretty good. Like
you can get through Christmas Vacation, but it ain't no.
But Christmas Vacation was dope. Though.
Okay.
Like, Is it up there?
That was John Hughes, right? Breakfast Club.
Mm-hmm.
All of those movies. John Hughes, man.
Is it funny?
It's funny, it's entertaining.
Is it better than Christmas Vacation?
You have some stars there before their careers blossom. Emilio Estevez, he's in it. He plays the jock.
Is it better than Christmas Vacation?
No.
Okay.
No, but it's a good movie.
Absolutely.
Check it
It's
out.
like asking is Schindler's List better than Dumb and Dumber? Like, I mean, it's two different kinds of movies.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm unfamiliar. I just heard 5 Kids got detention. I was like, okay. Well,
Yeah.
That also happened in Power Rangers.
Stop it.
Then look what happened.
I'm
That
just saying.
franchise ain't done nothing since.
Stop.
Power Ranger lost his finger.
He did.
Yeah.
So you're familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Were you a big Power Rangers guy growing up?
Was that a birth defect or did it
I
get
think
chopped off?
I have no idea. The
It just
story.
didn't grow. I didn't know.
Yeah.
It happened to John Wick, too. He lost a finger.
Well,
Yep.
It's a little more aggressive. Just a tad bit more aggressive. How's the Jock's phone line? How's the Jock's text line?
Text line.
205-834-9450. What's going on?
Text rolling in. That is a long one. Let's go to you got to go, Damien, with your buddy Andrew McLean on the Tennessee pick. Is that right?
I mean, he doesn't sway my fandom.
I didn't know.
No,
That's just
he's
what
a
they
big
put
Tennessee
out
guy.
there.
He doesn't sway it. Oh, so he already had you in.
No, I mean,
Okay, he doesn't make you leave it. Oh, okay, got it.
I told him, like, once Hypo leaves, like, y'all can kiss the whole Tennessee thing goodbye. I'm a Hypo disciple.
So that means you'll never wear Tennessee garb again when Hyper leaves?
No, I wouldn't say that.
Oh,
I'll still
okay.
represent the SEC.
They're
but
saying another listener says they don't trust your fandom. I wouldn't either.
I'm
It's
a-
whatever shirt he pulls out of the closet.
I'm a free agent, dog. My school's gone. Like, I can pick and choose where I go.
So you have Ohio State stuff too, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. They're in the SEC?
No, just
Okay.
good football.
Oh, okay.
This one reads, talking about stepping up in March Madness, what about Mo Diabate? He has hit 4 threes in the last 2 games, not to mention his defense blocking a 7-footer at the rim.
Yeah, it's what you needed.
I'm going to need him again. Can Arkansas pull a win like 11 seed LSU did over Georgia Tech 1986 or 11 Xavier over 2 Arizona 2017?
The way Richard Hendricks described it, I think they can.
That Texas Tech team is gettable, that Arkansas team.
Yeah. Just a style.
That Arkansas team, when they choose to play and they have the first 2 games of the tournament, they're pretty good. This one rolling in on the Queen no travel call at the end of the Maryland Colorado State game. For what I understand, due to the post-game coverage, Queen was not called for travel because you're allowed to gather and then 2 steps after that. So I guess one of those steps was counted as a gather. Either way, my bracket is thankful for the no call.
Hey, it happens. Like I said, if the referees didn't call it, it didn't happen.
If you look at what happened with, I think it was Coleman, he had a massive dunk in that in that NIT comeback game, like UAB basketball, like put it out there, like massive dunk. He took 3 steps.
Hey.
No one said nothing about that.
Josh in Huntsville says, as an Auburn fan, I feel sympathy for Colorado State. Not calling traveling violations in crunch time is migraine inducing. I hate Kyle Guy, going back to Virginia. And Kyle Guy who played.
Oh, yeah.
Who hit the last 3 free throws. But that was a double dribble in that game. I don't know if he was referencing that, but the non-double dribble call that happened.
Absolutely. Well, this is what we do on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. We have this segment called the Bad Box Score.
Oh, good.
Personal foul, 69, offense. He was giving them the business.
Intentional grounding, offense number 7. It's a 10-yard penalty. I'm talking to America here, excuse me.
That's the game.
And we take you to women's college basketball. We know that the women's tournament is also going on. I take you to Region 4 in Spokane, Washington. The UConn.
They're the Huscats.
The Huskies.
Oh. I mean, if you're going to call a woman husky, you go ahead. I wouldn't do that. But
I'm just reading the mascots.
Good awareness, John.
I'm just saying the mascots. And the Arkansas State.
They're the Red Wolvettes.
Red Wolves. I think it's gender neutral when it comes to wolves.
Red pups.
They're
No,
wolves.
don't say pups.
I mean, if you want to call a female wolf something, you go right ahead. I don't think you're allowed to say that.
No.
I like that. But the Huskies squeaked past the Arkansas Red Wolves to the tune of 103-34.
Whew.
The Red Wolves went 12 for 70 from the field, 6 for 40 at 3-pointers. You know how many offensive rebounds they snagged?
So you
off
average
those?
just over 3 points per quarter.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And on those 1,000 misses, you know how many offensive rebounds they got?
How many?
13.
That's sad.
Yeah. Total rebounds, 35. You know how many rebounds UConn had?
The rest.
53. So yeah, it's the best of the worst. Three lady Huskies, excuse me, 3 Huskies. The females, the women that are playing for UConn, they had
fine young ladies.
Yeah, they had 3 players with 20 or more points.
D, it's been fun.
It has been. It's been fun. It's been real fun.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep having fun.
Absolutely. 3-man front. They're next.